Chapter 748. This is going to be a good show. A master of the Castellan mansion sent a voice transmission to Feng Luan. Ling Shiqi injured Tang Haoqing. It's reasonable that the Tang family wants to regain some face. But I don't know how much Tang Haoquang fears Ling Shiqi. That will determine how much strength he will use. Feng Luan said, I've investigated this Ling Shiqi. He appeared out of nowhere. There was no trace of him before he showed up in Donglin town. There is a Tianyuan stage master named Lanyu Sword King overseas, but he hasn't shown up for decades. So it's hard to say whether he is real or not. But it doesn't matter whether he is the descendant of Lanyu Sword King or not. What matters is that a Tianyuan stage cultivator can't cultivate such a talent. So he must be backed by an extremely powerful force. With such a background, Tang Haoquang won't dare to use too much strength. Maybe he can force Ling Shiqi to use his moves. We can get the benefits without offending anyone. All we need to do is to watch the show. They all believed that Ling Shiqi would definitely lose. The others must have thought so too. In the field, Tang Haoquang also took out a spiritual sword. It was also a 5th level spiritual sword. Everyone looked interested because Tang Haoquang did not practice sword skills. What he was best at was using his fists, palms, and fingers to gain a foothold in the world. But now he was using a sword, a 5th level spiritual sword. It was obvious that he was targeting Ling Shiqi. Ling Shiqi was obviously a sword cultivator the last time he fought, but Tang Haoquang wanted to use a sword skill that he wasn't good at to fight against Ling Shiqi, who was a sword cultivator. He only dared to do this because he thought that he was invincible due to his high cultivation level. I didn't expect clan leader Tang to be a sword cultivator. I'd like to learn from you. Ling Shiqi said innocently. I don't dare to learn from you. It's just that I haven't used my sword for a long time. I'm afraid I'm rusty. If I can't hold back, please forgive me. Tang Haoquang sneered. Ling Shiqi nodded seriously as if he didn't hear it. Tang Haoquang snorted inwardly, acting like a fool. Soon after, Tang Haoquang unsheathed his sword and a terrifying pressure descended. His sword move stirred up the void, and 1,000 feet long illusory sword shadow appeared out of thin air. Its boundless sharpness crashed down like Mount Tai. He wasn't a sword cultivator, but this power surpassed most sword cultivators. Even Huang Xiuan stopped looking like he was watching a show. Clearly, Tang Haoquang's swordsmanship had exceeded his expectations. Ling Shiqi cupped his hands in greeting, and in the next moment, he slashed with his sword. In an instant, boundless sword aura surged like a raging wave, rolling to the east, wrapping in a majestic force to meet the attack. The void sword shadow and the furious waves sword river fiercely collided, and bursts of power exploded, shaking the heavens and earth. Even the overflowing spiritual energy caused the surroundings to become like a whirlpool that could devour everything at any time. Feng Luan immediately shouted, "Disperse!" Everyone reacted quickly and immediately retreated far away. At the same time, they formed seals to gather the overflowing terrifying power. After one move, the sword shadow and the sword river disappeared at the same time. They were evenly matched. Tang Haoquang's heart sank. He was a little surprised by Ling Shiqi's strength. He originally thought that Ling Shiqi would definitely be at a disadvantage under this move. However, Ling Shiqi took it. Not only did he take it, but he also didn't seem to have used his full strength. The gap between their cultivations was very big. Although the middle stage and the peak stage were only two small realms, the elemental spiritual energy that they could mobilize was indeed very different. However, from this point alone, Tang Haoquang had a complete victory. From this, it could be seen that Ling Shiqi's strength was definitely not just the middle stage of the unity of heaven and man realm. The sword in Tang Haoquang's hand flashed with a sharp light. Amidst the roar of the dragon, the wind and clouds in the air surged, and in an instant, the sword aura split into thousands of rays. The rays of sword aura condensed into a huge dragon shadow that fell, as if it was going to swallow Ling Shiqi directly. Monstrous waves immediately surged around Ling Shiqi. What was different was that this huge wave was flashing with earthy yellow brilliance. At the same time, the earth elemental power between heaven and earth vibrated wildly. Bursts of heavy sword moves merged into the huge wave, and the sword waves rolled back and enveloped the dragon. At this time, the few people from the mountain sea sect widened their eyes slightly. They actually felt a familiar aura from Ling Shiqi's sword moves. That was the combination of water and earth elemental power. This was clearly something that the mountain sea sect was very proud of. At this moment, it was revealed in the hands of Ling Shiqi. Although he was only at the beginning, as long as he continued to comprehend it, he would not be weaker than the masters of the mountain sea sect. For a moment, they thought that Ling Shiqi had secretly cultivated their cultivation method, but on second thought, that was not very likely. Chang Feng, you could only think that this was comprehended by Sword Monarch Lang Yu. After all, from the name, it was possible that Sword Monarch Lang Yu had cultivated both water and earth elemental sword moves at the same time, which just happened to be similar to the mountain sea sects. This time, Ling Shiqi's sword move had an additional heavy mountain sword move. It used the power of suppression, and he also secretly mixed in a few strands of earth elemental power. In an instant, Tang Haokuang's dragon sword aura began to gradually dissipate, and it was about to collapse. Tang Haokuang's face darkened. In the first move, they were evenly matched, which made him feel a little embarrassed. If he lost this time, he would lose a lot of face. I've underestimated you. Tang Haokuang's sword moves suddenly changed, and the dragon's shadow disintegrated on its own. In the blink of an eye, dark clouds covered the sky, and rain poured down. Every drop of rain was a ray of sword aura. The sword aura that blotted out the sky instantly broke through the sword river, and directly attacked Ling Shiqi. The sword aura above Ling Shiqi's head rushed to the sky, and the endless sword aura seemed to freeze time. As the sword pierced out, an ethereal divine figure appeared in mid-air, as if ascending to immortality. At a glance, it was almost similar to Ling Shiqi. The long sword fell, and the shocking divine light and sword aura merged into one. The man and the sword became one, and the heaven and man became one. The space even began to tremble slightly. Ling Shiqi used the startling sword of the 16 heavens transformation truth as the foundation, and combined it with the 1,000 illusion sword technique and many other sword auras to create a powerful spiritual technique that surpassed the 7th level, Sword Saint. All of Tang Haokuang's golden light was instantly shattered, and his confidence was also completely destroyed. He was no longer thinking about how to suppress Ling Shiqi. Instead, he was thinking about how to block this sword immortal. Feng Luan and the other experts in the unity of heaven and man realm were all shocked. Although Ling Shiqi's sword was not targeted at them, the sharp sword aura made them feel a chill in their hearts. Was this really a sword aura that could be possessed by someone in the middle stage of the unity of heaven and man realm? Not to mention the middle stage, even someone in the late stage of the unity of heaven and man realm might not be able to do this. Otherwise, the situation would not be reversed so quickly, and Tang Haokuang would not be the passive party. Chapter 749. Today, ever since Ling Shiqi made his move, he had brought too many surprises to everyone. Now, it seemed that he even had the strength to fight against Tang Haokuang, who was at the peak of the unity of heaven and man realm. To be able to cultivate to the middle stage of the unity of heaven and man realm in his 20s and possess such terrifying combat power, could this person be the reincarnation of a powerful person? Tang Haokuang, who was facing the sword celestial, was more surprised than anyone else. But at this moment, he did not care about being shocked. He threw away the long sword in his hand, and the divine light in his eyes suddenly burst out. A powerful pressure came. He pointed his finger, and the space shook. This finger seemed to tear the sky apart. Although it looked like a simple finger, it had a boundless pressure that could crush everything. This was one of Tang Haokuang's unique skills, the sky-shattering finger. Under the sky-shattering finger, more than half of the sword celestial's sword was immediately destroyed. However, the divine light behind Ling Shiqi's head shone brightly. A figure holding a sword suddenly appeared, and then merged with the sword celestial's shadow in the air. That was Ling Shiqi's divine soul. At this moment, Ling Shiqi's heaven, God, and man became one. In the heavens and earth, only the sword reigned supreme. The sword style that merged with the divine soul had transformed from a sword celestial to a sword god. In addition to the shocking sword intent in the world, a brilliant divine might appeared at this moment, causing people to unconsciously bow down and kowtow. No matter if it was a person or any power. The terrifying power of the sky-shattering finger that stirred the power of heaven and earth was compressed to the extreme under the divine power. Ling Shiqi's sword-style sword, and even a trace of heaven and earth's origin energy was faintly activated. As soon as the sword god appeared, the shocked expressions of many masters suddenly became a little more envious. They could all see that Ling Shiqi had the potential and foundation to break through to the heavenly origin stage. This was what they dreamed of. While Tang Haoquang was surprised, he also felt a huge pressure in his heart. He was facing a person who was 2 stages lower than him, but he was defeated again and again. This was unbelievable. What was even more unacceptable to Tang Haoquang was that from the moment he used the sky-shattering finger, it meant that he had lost. He did not intend to use his full strength from the beginning. Instead, he chose a sword technique that he was not very good at. He wanted to defeat Ling Shiqi with it. Thinking about how Ling Shiqi, a sword cultivator, was defeated by someone who wasn't a sword cultivator, it could be said that he had regained some face. Although Tang Haoquang was bullying the weak, it was still a result of drawing lots, wasn't it? However, when Tang Haoquang used the sky-shattering finger, it meant that he could not defeat Ling Shiqi with his sword skills alone. Therefore, even if he won, he would not be able to regain his dignity. When he faced the sword god's attack, he no longer thought about regaining his dignity. At this moment, he felt like he was facing a sky origin stage cultivator. He might lose. Tang Haoquang couldn't imagine it. If he lost to Ling Shiqi, not only him, but the entire Tang family would be humiliated. He would never allow such a thing to happen. Tang Haoquang stood there with rapt attention. His body did not move, but a power that could shake the heavens kept surging from his body. Feng Luan and the others were also surprised. Ling Shiqi actually forced Tang Haoquang to use the sky-shattering palm. Then, Tang Haoquang clapped his palms, and the world darkened. A heart-palpitating power was accumulated, but it was unstoppable. However, just as Tang Haoquang was about to make a big move, Ling Shiqi opened his mouth and shouted, "I admit defeat." He actually took the initiative to admit defeat, and in a flash, he directly appeared near Feng Luan. Ling Shiqi had been in seclusion for a long time. The wave sword style and the 2 ultimate moves of Sword Fairy and Sword God had almost drained him of his understanding of the sword principle. Only the mesmerizing flower eyes had not been used. He could not use this move, otherwise, his identity would be exposed. Moreover, Ling Shiqi had already gotten what he wanted. He could fight against the peak of the unity of heaven and man realm with the sword principle alone. Therefore, he admitted defeat. Anyway, there were 2 places left to advance, and he was still confident that he could get one. In fact, it was not impossible for him to win against Tang Haoquang, as long as he secretly put the law of earth into the wave sword style. However, in his opinion, there was no need for that. His performance today was shocking enough. If he defeated Tang Haoquang, it would be too shocking. It was not a good thing to be too sharp. Tang Haoquang suddenly felt a stifling feeling in his chest, which made him feel extremely uncomfortable. It was as if he had punched cotton with all his strength. He also wanted to fail to stop, but Ling Shiqi ran to Feng Luan's side in a flash, so it was impossible for him to make a move. Feng Luan immediately announced Tang Haoquang's victory. In this way, 8 out of the 10 places have been decided. The remaining 2 places will be decided in the arena. The 8 people who entered the second round can go to the arena first, and the 2 who win the most in the end will advance. The remaining 8 people looked at each other. The strongest among them should be the Mountain Sea Sex Chang Fengyu and Ling Shiqi. In fact, it was true. After going through rounds of battles, the 2 of them also competed for the last 2 places. At this point, the competition of the oneness of heaven and man realm in Donglin County was completely over. Next, the 10 people would go to the imperial capital and compete with the masters from various states and counties. It would also be a good opportunity for them to make a name for themselves. Feng Luan stepped forward and said, "Congratulations to the 10 of you. This is your promotion token. As long as you arrive at the imperial capital within 2 months, you will receive it." As he spoke, he took out the stone tokens and distributed them to Ling Shiqi and the others. Then, everyone exchanged greetings and dispersed. However, just as Ling Shiqi was about to leave, Chang Fengyu and the others from the Mountain Sea sect came over. "Brother Lang, please wait." Unconsciously, they had changed the way they addressed Ling Shiqi from young friend Lang to brother Lang. At first, even though Ling Shiqi's cultivation was in the oneness of heaven and man realm, and his potential and background were terrifying, he was still a junior in their eyes. However, after several battles today, Ling Shiqi's strength was close to the peak of the oneness of heaven and man realm. This kind of strength was enough to be ranked in the top few among the crowd, so they had to put away their previous attitude. "Elder Chang, if you have something to say, please say it," Ling Shiqi said politely. Chang Fengyu smiled. "Actually, it's nothing. I just want to ask if your master's sword principle is related to the power of water and earth." "Brother Lang, don't worry. We just felt a little familiar in your sword style. It is somewhat similar to the cultivation method of our Mountain Sea sect, so we just want to discuss it." When Chang Fengyu and Huang Xiuan were fighting, Ling Shiqi had some enlightenment and then naturally used it. "Elder Chang, are you suspecting that I have secretly learned the cultivation method of your sect?" Ling Shiqi immediately said with a displeased expression. "Of course not. Brother Lang, please don't misunderstand." Then Ling Shiqi first showed a hesitant expression, and then seemed to have made up his mind before saying, "Master has never allowed me to reveal this to outsiders. Since Elder Chang has asked, I will not hide it. In fact, Master did not teach me any Earth-type sword style. I was inspired when I was watching the battle between Elder Chang and sect leader Huang Xiuan, so I decided to integrate the Earth-type sword intent into the original wave sword style." "Impossible." Chang Fengyu immediately shook his head and said, "The cultivation method of our Mountain Sea sect is an 8th level cultivation method. How can you learn it just by watching others fight?" Ling Shiqi showed a strange and puzzled expression. He scratched his head and said, "Is it difficult? I learned it just by watching." Chapter 750. When Chang Fengyu and the others heard this, they almost fainted. What did he mean by just looking at it? The cultivation method that they were so proud of was so simple in Ling Shiqi's eyes? Was this even human words? If someone else said this in front of them, Chang Fengyu and the others would probably cut them into pieces. However, Ling Shiqi's words made them somewhat believe him. He was only in his 20s, but he was already in the middle stage of the unity of heaven and man realm. His own strength was close to the peak of the unity of heaven and man realm. Such a person's cultivation talent and comprehension were both abnormal. It was not impossible for him to comprehend something after just looking at it once. Chang Fengyu could only cup his fists and say, "I didn't expect Brother Lang's comprehension to be so superb. I'm so envious. We have to go back to the sect first. I don't know if Brother Lang is interested in going to the Mountain Sea sect for a chat." Ling Shiqi sneered in his heart. If he really went to the Mountain Sea sect, it would not be as easy to fool them as it was now. He immediately declined. "In that case, let's meet in the imperial capital. Goodbye." Chang Fengyu finished speaking and left with the people from the Mountain Sea sect. Ling Shiqi turned into a phantom and left the place. At the same time, he opened his supercilious eyes. After there were no other auras within 100 miles, his figure disappeared in a tricolored light. At this time, in Donglin City, the competition between the Spirit Aperture Realm cultivators had also come to an end. In the end, there were 10 people who obtained the opportunity to go to the imperial capital. Tang Wanxiu of the Tang family was one of them. After the competition ended, Tang Wanxiu dragged her injured and exhausted body back to her residence. It was reasonable to say that it was already a great honor for her to be in the top 10. If it were any other family or sect, they would have already started to celebrate. However, in the Tang family, there was not a single person who welcomed her. It was as if this was what she should have done. However, Tang Wanxiu was already used to it. A spirit cultivator family was not a sect. As long as there was a genius disciple, it was possible to rise up. In a spirit cultivator family, bloodline and seniority were the most important. Tang Wanxiu, as the daughter of a concubine, was destined from birth to be a tool of the Tang family. When she returned to her room, she endured the pain and applied medicine on herself. There was no extra resentment on her face, only determination. But in reality, her hatred for the Tang family had already surpassed ordinary enmity. She gave up on running away and resisting, because this first spirit cultivator conference was also an excellent opportunity for her. This was a good opportunity for him to make a name for himself and no longer be controlled by the Tang family. She had to seize this opportunity. Looks like you need some help. At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded beside her ear, as if it was right next to her. Tang Wanxiu was shocked. She immediately unsheathed her sword, but a cold wind suddenly blew in the room, making her feel cold all over. Then, a young man in black appeared in front of her like a ghost. This person was Leng Shiqi. You are? Tang Wanxiu quickly calmed down. She looked at Leng Shiqi's face and found it familiar. It wasn't that Tang Wanxiu recalled the incident in the illusory spirit's secret realm, but the news of a young Union of Heaven realm expert appearing in the city had spread out recently. On the day of Leng Shiqi's registration, Tang Wanxiu had also seen him from afar. I'm Leng Shiqi. You should have heard of me. Hearing Leng Shiqi directly admit it, Tang Wanxiu was surprised and said, It's really you. The Union of Heaven realm expert. Don't make such a fuss. I'm here to make a deal with you. Leng Shiqi had already placed 8 ghost slaves in the room. Everything that happened here would not be known by others. A deal? Tang Wanxiu's eyes were filled with doubt, and then she was full of vigilance. We don't seem to have anything to do with each other. Besides, our cultivation levels are too different. I should call you senior. What can we make a deal with? Her words were full of disbelief. Leng Shiqi nodded secretly. When he first met Tang Wanxiu at the Golden Wing Academy, he felt that she was somewhat shrewd and calm. He said, You were able to enter the top 10 of Donglin County today not only because of your strength, but also because of the mysterious power hidden in your body. Without that power, with your cultivation at the middle stage of the spirit aperture realm, it would be impossible for you to get a place to go to the imperial capital. Am I right? Tang Wanxiu's heart trembled as if her secret had been seen through. I don't understand what you're talking about. Leng Shiqi shook his head. There's nothing to hide. Who doesn't have a trump card? Besides, anyone with a bit of insight can see through your tricks. However, if you want to stand out in the imperial capital, it's far from enough. You should be very clear about this. The content of our deal is very simple. I can help you break through to the late stage of the spirit aperture realm quickly, and you just need to tell me how many Union of Heaven realm experts there are in the Tang family and where they are. After Tang Wanxiu heard the benefits offered by Leng Shiqi, she was tempted. No one would have any resistance to cultivation. And as Leng Shiqi said, it was already her limit to enter the top 10 of Donglin County. It would be too difficult for her to get a place in the imperial capital. Therefore, cultivation was too attractive for Tang Wanxiu. However, after she heard Leng Shiqi's conditions, she suddenly became vigilant. As a first-class force, the Tang family had Union of Heaven realm experts as their strongest support. The specific number was a secret, and it could also be said that it was a trump card. Most sects and forces did not show their full strength to others. They would more or less hide a part of their strength. For example, Elder Gu and Elder Mu in the Blood Garment Pavilion were hidden, and outsiders did not know. Now, Leng Shiqi wanted to know the number of Union of Heaven realm experts in the Tang family. What did he want to do? What Leng Shiqi wanted to do was, of course, to destroy the Tang family. His purpose was to kill all the Union of Heaven realm experts in the Tang family. However, just in case, it was better to get the most accurate information first. In addition, he also wanted to use this opportunity to win over Tang Wanqiu. Tang Wanqiu's talent and strength were nothing in Lin Shiqi's eyes. She did not even meet the requirements to be recruited into the underworld. However, it was very likely that she had Meng Tianzong's power, so Lin Shiqi wanted to use Tang Wanqiu to study Meng Tianzong's purpose. He smiled and said, "Miss Tang, what are you worried about? Do you think I will harm the Tang family? Isn't this what you want to see? I can help you do what you want to do the most, and destroy the Tang family." As Lin Shiqi spoke, a 9-colored light flashed in his eyes. Unknowingly, Tang Wanqiu's hatred for the Tang family was aroused. Her eyes were instantly bloodshot, revealing a terrible hatred. Chapter 751. Lin Shiqi's ghostly voice went directly into Tang Wanqiu's mind. "Do you hate the Tang family?" The hatred in Tang Wanqiu's eyes increased sharply, and she said without hesitation, "Yes." "Very well, it seems that our deal is done." "No," Tang Wanqiu suddenly said. She didn't let Lin Shiqi completely take over her mind. This was also the manifestation of Lin Shiqi's new attainments in illusion. She wouldn't even know that she was in an illusion. Tang Wanqiu said seriously, "I don't care if you have the ability to destroy the Tang family. I don't care either, but I must save my mother's life. Don't worry, I only want to kill the masters of the Tang family. As for the others, they don't deserve my attention. You can arrange for your mother in advance so that she won't be implicated. This is what I promised you." Lin Shiqi took out a thumb-sized jade as he spoke. This is a spiritual jade, a product of pure spiritual power. After you refine it, it will be enough for you to cultivate to the 8th level of the spirit aperture realm without any future troubles. Tang Wanqiu's face showed a trace of hesitation, but she immediately took the spiritual jade. Then she wrote down a note with the information of all the masters of the Tang family in the oneness of heaven and men realm. At this time, she couldn't help but ask, "Can you really destroy the Tang family? No matter how strong you are only in the oneness of heaven and men realm." "Miss Tang, you don't have to worry about that. The information I obtained from you can also be bought from Wind Whispering Tower. The reason why I chose to trade with Miss Tang is because I can't stand the Tang family's attitude and actions towards you." Tang Wanqiu had a very funny feeling in her heart. As a member of the Tang family, she had never been cared for by her own family. Now she was cared for by an outsider, and by a person who wanted to destroy the Tang family. Even though this kind of concern might be fake, or perhaps she was just pretending to be polite, or perhaps she was just using her, it still showed that she was truly disheartened by the Tang family. Seeing that the deal was made, Lin Shiqi didn't hesitate. "Miss Tang will definitely not regret today's choice. I will take my leave." 2 days later, the Tang family was celebrating. After the preliminary selection in Donglin County, more than a dozen people from the Tang family, from the Unity of Heaven and Man stage to the Spirit Transformation stage, had made it to the second round. In Donglin County, it was only second to the Mountain Sea sect. It was indeed worth celebrating. At this moment of celebration, Tang Wanqiu left after showing her face, but no one paid much attention to her. Tang Wanqiu used this opportunity to quietly send her mother out of the Tang family. Although she didn't think that Lin Shiqi could really destroy the Tang family, she still had some hope in her heart. Even if they couldn't destroy the Tang family, it would still be good if they could make the Tang family face huge trouble. The next day, the Tang clan patriarch, Tang Haoquang, led all the victorious Tang clan disciples and set off for the imperial city. Little did they know that once they left, they would never be able to return. Seeing that Tang Haoquang and the others were 100 miles away, Lin Shiqi appeared in the Tang family's territory like a ghost. When he opened his supercilious eye, he instantly discovered the auras of 3 Unity of Heaven and Man stage experts. These 3 people had participated in the World First Spiritual Cultivator Conference and were eliminated. Tang Haoqing was one of them. However, according to the information that Tang Wanqiu had given him, the Tang family didn't only have these few Unity of Heaven and Man stage experts. In addition, there were 2 late-stage Unity of Heaven and Man stage experts hiding. This could be said to be the Tang family's strongest trump card. Logically speaking, Tang Wanqiu shouldn't have known about it. However, after her cultivation began to advance by leaps and bounds a few years ago, the Tang family didn't understand the situation, so they asked the 2 elders to see what was going on. Only then did Tang Wanqiu learn about this matter. The 2 experts had been hiding in the Tang family's ancestral hall. The ancestral hall was covered with arrays. Even Ling Shiqi's supercilious eye couldn't see through it. With Ling Shiqi's strength, he wasn't afraid of 2 more late-stage Unity of Heaven and Man stage experts. However, he didn't have the ability to kill everyone in the Tang family alone. Moreover, he couldn't expose his true identity, so he had to fight a prepared battle. At this moment, Tang Haoqing was still drinking and chatting happily with the other 2 elders of the Unity of Heaven and Man stage. In this world-first spiritual cultivator conference, their Tang family could be considered to have made a lot of headlines. Other than Ling Shiqi, who had appeared out of nowhere, everything else was joyous. Tang Haoqing heroically drank a large bowl of wine and said excitedly, "In my opinion, the patriarch will definitely be ranked on the Flying Dragon list." At that time, who in the world doesn't know about our Tang family? Ha ha ha. That's right. The patriarch's strength is unfathomable. He has never used his full strength. Let the people of the other provinces see the strength of our Tang family. Come, come, drink, drink. Tang Haoqing poured a full bowl of wine and put it to his mouth. Just as he was about to drink it, his eyes suddenly widened and his face quickly turned red. Then, with a bang, Tang Haoqing exploded into a cloud of blood mist. The other 2 elders were stunned. What was going on? In the next moment, they turned pale with fright. As if they were facing a great enemy, they shouted, "Who dares to behave so atrociously in the Tang family? The person who will kill you." A voice descended from the 9 heavens. The 2 elders looked up at the same time and saw a figure bathed in resplendent starlight slowly descending from the sky. Stars swirled around that person's body like a dazzling armor, looking mysterious and profound. This was the 7th-level spiritual technique that came with the Heavenly Cycle Star God technique after Ling Shiqi broke through to the Unity of Heaven and Man stage, the Star God armor. This was a powerful spiritual technique that combined amplification and defense. When it was used, Ling Shiqi's cultivation directly reached the late stage of the Unity of Heaven and Man stage. He opened his hand and the stellar glint circulated, setting up a starry sky barrier. All the elemental spiritual energy in the Tang family's territory was isolated. The 2 elders of the Tang family were about to mobilize the elemental spiritual energy of heaven and earth to defend against the enemy, but at this time, they suddenly found that they could not sense any elemental spiritual energy. In the sky, it was daytime, but in the blink of an eye, it turned into a starry sky, and those countless stars seemed to be slowly growing larger. No, it wasn't enlarging. Instead, it was an endless stream of stars descending upon them. Stars falling down, destroying heaven and earth. The 2 elders of the Tang family could not mobilize the elemental spiritual energy of heaven and earth, so they were only a little stronger than those in the gang's spirit realm. They could hardly resist such an attack. They could only forcibly burn their essence and blood to try to escape, but the stars seemed to lock onto them. No matter how they moved, they could not escape the fate of being penetrated by thousands of stars. 2 great masters in the Unity of Heaven and Man stage were killed in a face-to-face encounter. At the same time, the whole Tang family was suddenly filled with panicked voices. A large number of Tang family disciples were frantically fleeing outside. Ling Shiqi did not pay attention to those people, because he was waiting for 2 people. As expected, 2 streaks of flowing light rushed out of the ancestral hall of the Tang family. Some Tang family members thought that their savior had come, but the 2 streaks of flowing light fled at an incredible speed. Chapter 752. The 2 streaks of light were the Tang family's hidden Unity of Heaven and Man experts. They were both in the late stage of the Unity of Heaven and Man realm. Now that the Tang family was facing a crisis, they should have descended like gods of war to save the Tang family. That was the meaning of their existence. However, they did not care about the lives of the Tang family disciples and fled without looking back. What a joke. Tang Haoqing and the other two were at the unity of heaven and man realm. If they died without a sound, the attacker must be at the sky origin realm. Wouldn't it be suicide for them to fight against a sky origin realm expert? They might as well take the opportunity to escape. As long as they were still alive and met up with Tang Haoquang, they would have a chance to survive. If they were still alive, the Tang family would not be destroyed. At worst, they could just build another Tang family. In the end, their own lives were more important. Ling Shiqi, who was in midair, smiled with interest. It's a good thing that I got the information in advance. Otherwise, they might have escaped. Since he knew that the Tang family had two unity of heaven and man realm experts, why did he barge in without any preparation? The 1,000 illusion sword in Ling Shiqi's hand flashed. Immediately, sword threads as thin as hair suddenly surged out from the ground of the heavenly mountain. Every single one of those sword threads carried a terrifyingly sharp sword intent. As they shot out, they pierced through the air and intertwined with each other to form a sword formation. The two streaks of light collided with the sword threads. One of them slapped out with his palms and a heaven-shaking palm shadow fell. It was one of the Tang family's ultimate techniques, the heaven-shaking palm. The other person pointed out a finger. The space trembled and a terrifying finger force exploded the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. This was the heaven-shattering finger that Ling Shiqi had seen before. When the two ultimate techniques were used, the mountain behind the Tang family began to show signs of collapsing. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth formed a frightening storm. The two originally thought that they had a chance to rush out of the sword array, but suddenly, a mysterious force pressed down on them like Mount Tai. The two of them were instantly pressed down several hundred feet into the ground. Whatever heaven-shaking palm or heaven-shattering finger, they were all destroyed. Ling Shiqi gestured with one hand and the 1,000 illusion Dao sword appeared in his hand. The 1,000 illusion Dao sword lit up with specks of starlight, making it even more dazzling. Immediately, the power of the stars in the sky transformed into streaks of sword light that rained down like a meteor shower. The two unity of heaven realm experts were unable to move under the suppression of the gravitational space. Seeing that they were about to perish, they were extremely unwilling. They still didn't know who did it, because Ling Shiqi was wearing the star god battle armor. They couldn't see his face, and they couldn't sense his aura. They didn't understand who the Tang family had offended and why they would encounter such a terrifying enemy and suffer such a calamity. One of them was bathed in blood, and he transmitted his voice with great difficulty. Quickly send a message to the patriarch and the others. Quickly hide. Following which, the man's body began to swell rapidly and self-destruct. However, the power of his self-destruction was not used to counterattack. Instead, it formed layers of waves that blocked in front of the other person. He was using his life to buy a sliver of time. The other person took the opportunity to take out a jade plate and spat out a mouthful of blood essence that condensed into a line of words that entered the jade plate. Just as he finished his actions, the boundless starry sword light had already attacked, and not even his bones were left. Ling Shiqi stood in the air, using the anti-gravity force to easily fly. This was also a small trick he used to pretend that he was a sky origin stage expert. Although it was a small trick, from the beginning, he gave off a sense of invincibility. Otherwise, these two late-stage experts of the unity of heaven realm would not have been so easy to kill. With a light hook of his finger, their mustard seed bracelets flew into his hand. Ling Shiqi looked down at the Tang family below. Currently, more than half of the Tang family had been destroyed, and the disciples inside had either died or fled. Although he did not target the other spirit cultivators when he attacked, the power that was unintentionally leaked out was a nightmare for those spirit cultivators. The Tang family was clearly immersed in the atmosphere of celebration a moment ago, but in the next moment, they were greeted with a disaster, and it was a disaster that was inexplicable. Ling Shiqi's attack this time was equivalent to eliminating more than half of the Tang family's strength. The Tang family, which was once a huge monster to him, had unknowingly become so weak. Or rather, it was not that the Tang family was weak, but that Ling Shiqi was too strong. Of course, Ling Shiqi did not have time to sigh here. He had already completed most of the purpose of his trip. Next, he only needed to deal with Tang Haoquang and the others, and the Tang family would be left to fend for themselves. Immediately, he opened the system map and instantly locked onto Tang Haoquang's position. At this moment, in a remote area at the foot of the Tang family's mountain, a beautiful figure was looking at Ling Shiqi with a complicated expression in her eyes. Most of them were shock and disbelief, but there was also a trace of joy. As for the Tang family, who was hundreds of miles away, they still did not know what had happened. Because there were a few low-level spirit cultivator among them, their speed was not very fast, and they planned to stay in the mountains for the night. To them, they could easily build a small house, and with Tang Haoquang here, they did not have to worry about their safety. They could just treat it as a trip. At this moment, Tang Haoquang had settled everyone down and was about to meditate when a round jade pendant hanging on his waist shattered. Tang Haoquang was shocked. This jade pendant was only used when the Tang family was in great danger. However, they had just left the clan grounds and had not gone too far. What could have happened to the Tang family? The others also walked over nervously, wanting to see what had happened. Tang Haoquang waved his hand and said, "Everyone, rest. I don't think it's a big deal." As the clan leader, he was the best at comforting people. Then, with his back facing everyone, he formed a seal. The jade pendant flashed with traces of blood light and formed a few words: "The Sky Origin realm is coming, the clan grounds are destroyed, run. Run. Run." Seeing this line of words, Tang Haoquang was stunned. He did not dare to believe what he was seeing. When did their Tang family offend a Sky Origin realm expert? The clan grounds were destroyed, which meant that the 5 Unity of Heaven Origin realm experts in the Tang family had all fallen. Especially the last 3 words, run, which made Tang Haoquang's heart tremble with fear. Tang Haoquang's strange behavior was naturally seen by everyone. Everyone's heart thumped. Could something have happened to the clan grounds? Clan leader, what happened? There are many experts in the clan grounds. Nothing should happen. Leader, please tell us. We are really worried. Suddenly, a resplendent figure stood in the air. A sharp killing intent enveloped everyone. He said in a voice that made people feel cold, "Don't worry, you will meet soon." Chapter 753. Who is it? Tang Haoquang jumped up at once. How could someone get close to him when he was so close to him? However, when he saw the figure flying in the sky like a star god descending, his heart sank to the bottom of the valley. Sky Origin Stage Cultivator. Is there really a Sky Origin Stage Cultivator attacking the Tang clan? Tang Haoquang was shocked. He thought he was an experienced man. He had never messed with a Sky Origin Stage Cultivator. How could such a disaster happen? What on earth was going on? The others were in despair. The Sky Origin Stage Cultivator who suddenly showed up with a murderous intent was definitely not here to reason with them. Tang Haoquang was shocked and confused at the same time. He had just received the news from the clan. How could someone find them in such a short time and come here in such a short time? Was there more than one Sky Origin Stage Cultivator attacking the Tang clan? Tang Haoquang shouted in his mind. How could the Tang clan be attacked by 2 Sky Origin Stage Cultivators? He couldn't help but ask, "Master, may I know what we have done to offend you? Why are you doing this?" Ling Shiqi answered in an old voice, "Cause and effect. It is time for you to pay for what you have done." Tang Haoquang was even more confused. However, Ling Shiqi didn't want to waste any more time on them. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, he made up his mind and 2 more arms grew out from his back. At the same time, all kinds of spiritual power gathered together and exploded his spiritual power. It was like a giant whirlpool. Things had come to this point. the only thing Tang Haokuang could do was to fight. He pointed out the sky-breaking finger, piercing through the air. The sky-shaking palm went against the natural order. Tang Haokuang stomped on the sky again as if he was going to step on the sky. The sky-breaking finger, the sky-shaking palm, and the sky-trampling kick were the three most powerful skills of the Tang clan. Tang Haokuang was using all three skills at the same time. The three different kinds of power were swirling together. Vaguely, Tang Haokuang had triggered a slight trace of the natural order. Ling Shiqi was shocked. Tang Haokuang seemed to have touched the edge of the sky origin stage. Maybe he could break through in a few years. What a pity. Ling Shiqi's 4 arms formed a seal. In an instant, the cries of the fire phoenix incinerated the sky and destroyed the world. The roar of the water dragon devoured everything. The roar of the wind tiger shook heaven and earth. The descent of the black tortoise suppressed everything. The innate 4 phases filled the world like a Dharma idol. This posture alone made Tang Haokuang and the others horrified. Even the spirit cultivators below the spirit astral realm were directly shocked to death by the terrifying spiritual pressure. Ling Shiqi brought his 4 arms together, and the power of the 4 elements suddenly fused together to form an array diagram that connected the heavens and the earth. Strands of the power of laws that reached the source of origin spread out, and Tang Haokuang's fists, palms, and legs disappeared in an instant. 4 spirits diagram. At first, Tang Haokuang thought he was facing a sky origin stage cultivator. He didn't expect to win. He just wanted to try his best to buy some time for the others to escape. Even if their chances of escaping were extremely slim, they still had to fight for it. However, when the 4 spirits diagram came out, the area within a radius of hundreds of miles was as terrible as the end of the world. There was no place for them to escape. As the patriarch of a first-class force, Tang Haokuang had seen some great storms, but at this moment, he couldn't help but feel desperate. In front of this absolute power, he, who was at the peak of the oneness of heaven and man realm, was still so small and fragile. But suddenly, his eyes widened as if he thought of something. He roared, "This is the 4 spirits diagram. You are Lu Xingji, the 4th director of the Dark Thunder Guards." He finally remembered that more than a year ago, a major event had happened in Pinghui Prefecture, which was the destruction of the top sect, the Thousand Illusion Sword sect. In that battle, Ling Shiqi shone brightly. He defeated Wei Qi Yan with the 4 spirits diagram. Since then, his relevant information had been grasped by the major forces, so Tang Haokuang finally recognized him. The 4 spirits diagram slowly descended, and the boundless violent power destroyed everything. Tang Haokuang's last consciousness died with his eyes wide open. He couldn't understand why the director of the Dark Thunder Guards wanted to deal with the Tang family. Unfortunately, he would never know that Ling Shiqi was the person who killed Tang and Pu of the Tang family back then. He was also the person who was almost killed by Tang Haokuang's punch. Ling Shiqi was right. All of this was karma. Rumble. The destructive power of the 4 spirits diagram descended. Tang Haokuang and the others, as well as the land within a radius of 50 miles, disappeared without a trace as if they had evaporated. As far as the eye could see, all that was left was a terrifying abyss. Ling Shiqi had already removed his star god armor. His face was a little pale. Using the 4 spirits diagram had consumed a lot of his energy. But at the same time, the 4 spirits diagram was much stronger than when he was in Pinghui Prefecture. Even a lion would use all its strength to hunt a rabbit. He didn't dare to be careless when facing Tang Haokuang, the leader of a first-rate force. He immediately used the 4 spirits diagram to kill him. At this point, Ling Shiqi could be considered to have settled one of his worries. After using the power of the earth to wipe away all traces, he directly returned to the imperial capital. Not long after, several figures arrived. These people were all in the unity of heaven and man realm, and most of them were people who had participated in the World First Spiritual Cultivator Conference. Chang Fengyu and Huang Xiuan were among them. Like Tang Haokuang, they also went back to celebrate before heading to the imperial capital. They weren't very far away. Just now, they had sensed the destructive power from 100 miles away, so they decided to come and check it out. Of course, they weren't that stupid. They waited until the commotion was over before rushing over. However, all they saw was a barren land. Other than that, there was nothing else. It was precisely because there was nothing that these people were very puzzled. There were clearly powerful experts fighting here, so how could there be no traces? Therefore, they quickly guessed that the traces of the battle had been wiped away by someone. They searched around but still didn't find anything. In the end, they could only leave with doubts. A few days later, they learned that the Tang family had suffered heavy casualties. They were actually killed by several hostile second-rate forces. From the beginning to the end, all of the Tang family's unity of heaven and man realm cultivators didn't show up. It was as if they had disappeared without a trace. In addition, they didn't find any traces of Tang Haoquang and the others in the past few days. At this time, Huang Xiuan and the others suddenly realized that the people who died in the battle that day might be Tang Haoquang and the others. While they were surprised, they couldn't help but sigh. The Tang family, a first-rate force that had been established in Donglin County for more than 100 years, was unexpectedly wiped out without a sound. Who was the one who did it? Since they could wipe out the Tang family, they could also wipe out Shiju Wu. They could also be a great threat to the Mountain Sea sect. At this moment, the Mountain Sea sect and Shiju Wu were also cautious. The entire Donglin County was once again in a state of panic. Chapter 754. Thunderblaze Dynasty, Imperial Palace. Ling Shiqi's soul avatar rubbed the space between his eyebrows helplessly. In front of him, there was a small mountain of memorials. After all, the throne of the Thunderblaze dynasty had been vacant for nearly 2 years. Although there was the shoddy king, he was not someone who liked to review memorials. At that time, Crown Prince Lei Haoge was focused on causing trouble, so he had accumulated a lot. In addition, the world's first spirit cultivator conference was in full swing, and Ling Shiqi had almost arranged everything. But the problem was that there were also many spirit cultivators and major forces from the Starfall dynasty and Northern Wei dynasty who had come because of their fame. These people had to be watched closely. Thus, one thing after another was piled up in front of him. With the powerful cultivation of the soul avatar and the existence of his divine soul, logically speaking, he should not feel tired. However, at this moment, he felt dizzy, as if his mental strength had been overused. Dealing with these state affairs was not something that could be done with a simple reply. He had to weigh the pros and cons and consider many factors. Especially since he had just ascended the throne, he did not know much about the style of many ministers and the situation of the various states and counties. He had to prepare many memorials before he could give an answer. The key was that this situation had been maintained for a few months. Even with the soul avatar's divine soul and powerful cultivation, he could not hold on any longer. Now that he thought about it, Lei Qingjun, who did not have any talent for cultivation, could sit in this position for decades. He could be said to be an extraordinary person. It was no wonder that Lei Qingjun, despite his young age and having countless treasures to enjoy, still passed away at such a young age. This throne was not something that ordinary people could sit on. Other than that, perhaps because the soul avatar's performance was very outstanding and he had a sense of propriety in handling matters, the 2 elders of the royal family were handling fewer and fewer matters. It was obvious that they were preparing to slowly give him all the power. At that time, there would be even more memorials to deal with. Thinking of this, the soul avatar couldn't help but frown even more. Who said that the emperor could summon the wind and rain, enjoy glory, splendor, wealth, and 3,000 beauties in the harem? As long as it was an emperor with a bit of ambition, they would not even have time to dote on their concubines. Speaking of which, some of these memorials advised him to take more concubines to enrich the harem. The original owner of this body, Lei Haoyan, only had 3 concubines. Ever since he ascended to the throne, he had been busy with state affairs and had not visited even once. Therefore, the harem was now an extremely desolate place. It wasn't that the soul avatar didn't like beautiful women. The key was that he wasn't Lei Haoyan. Although he had tried his best to adapt to Lei Haoyan's habits, no one could teach him that. Moreover, even though he and Lei Haoyan shared the same body, the soul avatar still felt a little strange. At this moment, the soul avatar sighed and picked up a memorial in front of him. When he saw the contents, he laughed inwardly. It turned out that the Dark Thunder Guard of Donglin County had sent the report. It was about how Ling Shiqi had killed the elites of the Tang family and destroyed their land. Later, he also wrote about the strange scene when Ling Shiqi killed Tang Haoquang, saying that it was worth investigating. This time, the soul avatar did not hesitate. He waved his hand and replied, "The deeper the conflict between the sects, the better." What he meant was that he did not want the Dark Thunder Guard to investigate. He did not want them to find any clues. "Your Majesty, you should rest." The old eunuch next to him brought him a cup of tea and said with concern. This was the person who had served Lei Haoyan when he was at his lowest. He should not have kept such a person around because he knew too much about Lei Haoyan's habits. Ling Shiqi's soul avatar kept him because he had been with Lei Haoyan for too long. Lei Haoyan had always treated his own people well, so it was not easy to do anything to him. Therefore, he used an illusion to change the eunuch's mind. The eunuch would think that the soul avatar's actions were normal. The soul avatar looked at him, picked up the teacup, and took a sip. He did not speak because he saw someone coming through the door. "Ask Minister Mo to come in." The old eunuch bowed and walked to the door. He saw Prime Minister Mo Linhui coming. "Prime Minister Mo, His Majesty wants to see you." Mo Linhui's eyes flashed. "His Majesty knows I'm coming?" Inside the hall, Mo Linhui knelt and bowed. "This old subject greets His Majesty." "May Your Majesty live for 10,000 years." "Minister Mo, please rise. Have a seat." After Mo Linhui sat down, the soul avatar asked, "What matter does Minister Mo have to report?" "Your Majesty." Mo Linhui straightened his body. "This old subject has two important matters to report to Your Majesty. There is no harm in speaking. The first matter is about the 4 chiefs of the Dark Thunder Guard and the 4 punishment envoys of the Discipline Commission." Mo Linhui's face was solemn. "Your Majesty, the Dark Thunder Guard and the Discipline Commission are very important to the Thunderblaze dynasty. There must not be people who sit on their meager contributions. Especially the 2 chiefs, the 4 chiefs, and the 4 punishment envoys. They have been in charge of the Dark Thunder Guard and the Discipline Commission for many years. Each of them has a higher prestige than the last." Chapter 755. Spread the family? The soul clone was speechless. This matter was much bigger than he had imagined. But then again, it made sense. Not to mention the imperial family, even ordinary clans valued the inheritance of their heirs very much. Now that he was the emperor, he didn't have a son. If something happened to him, wouldn't he have no one to inherit the throne? Although there were still many members of the imperial family in the Thunderblaze dynasty, it was inevitable that fierce internal strife would erupt and cause instability. This was definitely not something Mo Linhui and the other officials wanted to see. Thus, the matter of taking in concubines couldn't be delayed any longer. The soul clone didn't expect that he would be forced to take in concubines when he only wanted to be a proper emperor. It was truly difficult. However, the soul clone also understood that there would be various factions behind the concubines. Being chosen as a concubine by him, the new emperor, definitely wouldn't be low in status in the future. Then, this concubine's family would become relatives of the imperial family and would naturally soar in status. From another perspective, the soul clone could also use this method to nurture some of his trusted officials. It was a win-win situation. Minister Mo's words are very true. This old official has also found a few women for Your Majesty. Your Majesty can summon them. After saying this, Mo Linhui took out a list of names. The soul clone smiled faintly and said, "It seems Minister Mo came prepared." It is this old official's duty to solve your majesty's problems. Mo Linhui bowed deeply. The soul clone looked down and instantly saw a special name on the list. Moe Lu. He and Moe Lu could be said to have met once. When Leng Shiqi first arrived in the imperial capital, he went to participate in the Celestial Treasures Enterprises auction. It was at that auction that he obtained the wondrous fish and water joy technique, which replenished all of his spiritual cavities. He also met his senior sister Sulwan. However, because of this, he inexplicably offended this Moe Lu. It was said that she was the woman with the best cultivation talent in the imperial capital. At the same time, her more important identity was Minister Mo's youngest daughter. The soul avatar cast a deep glance at Mo Linhui. This Mo Xianghua could be considered an elder of 3 dynasties. Now, he was only below one person and above tens of thousands of people. Yet, he still wanted to be his father-in-law. Was he still not satisfied? Mo Linhui, on the other hand, looked straight into the eyes of the soul doppelganger, his entire body exuding a magnanimous aura. A thought flashed through the soul avatar's mind. He pondered for a moment and said, although the matter of me taking a concubine is my private matter, if we can use it, it might have a good effect. Mo Linhui's heart was as clear as a mirror. He knew that the emperor in front of him was very different from before he ascended the throne. He looked rough on the outside, but he was very careful on the inside. He said, Your Majesty must have other ideas. This old subject is all ears. I once said that other than the dragon ranking, I will also set up a phoenix dance ranking to list all the beauties in the world. Minister Mo, do you think this beauty on the phoenix dance list is qualified to become my concubine? The soul avatar first threw out a question. Mo Linhui stood there with rapt attention, and did not speak for a moment. The phoenix dance list was purely based on appearance, but if one wanted to become an imperial concubine, not only did they need to have a peerless appearance, they also needed to have a deep background, talent, or outstanding talent. No matter what, they had to have a few of these. Other than that, the most important thing was to have a clean background. To be able to be chosen to become an imperial concubine in the palace, the next few generations had to be investigated clearly. Not even the slightest bit of stain could be allowed. Therefore, Mo Linhui definitely did not agree with the soul avatar's words, but he did not refute it. Seeing Mo Linhui's silence, the soul avatar continued, The women that Minister Mo gave me are all daughters of courtiers. I believe that since these women can enter Minister Mo's eyes, there is naturally no problem. However, I also want to choose a few women from the Spirit Cultivator sect this time. After he finished speaking, Mo Linhui was shocked. Right now, the Thunder Flame Dynasty and the Spirit Cultivator sect were like fire and water. In other words, they wanted to take advantage of the first Spirit Cultivator assembly to ease the tension and break the relationship and trust between the sections. If there really were women from the Spirit Cultivator sect who entered the palace, if something went wrong, it would be terrible. However, when Mo Linhui thought about how His Majesty had first mentioned the Phoenix dance list, he immediately understood the meaning of the soul avatar. His eyes lit up. This old subject understands. Your Majesty wants to use the name of selecting concubines to set up the Phoenix dance list, and then choose a suitable candidate to enter the palace. In this way, the Spirit Cultivator sect and the imperial family will become in-laws, and the relationship will naturally ease. Not only that, my dear minister, you can think about it. Once a certain Spirit Cultivator sect marries me, how will they get along with the other powers? Gradually, this sect will only belong to the imperial family and become my vassal. This matter will be handed over to Minister Mo to handle. I believe in you. Mo Linhui shouted, Your Majesty is wise, and immediately received the order and left. At this time, Leng Shiqi had already returned to the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guards. During this period of time, he had announced that he was in seclusion and did not allow anyone to disturb him, so no one knew that he had actually gone to Donglin County for a stroll. As the participants of the second round of the first Spirit Cultivator Conference arrived at the imperial capital one after another, Leng Shiqi finally came out of seclusion and began to take over everything. At this moment, Ling Shiqi was looking at a piece of information. The people inside were all on the list of those who had entered the second round, and there were only about 1,000 of them. In theory, the 36 provinces of the Thunderfire dynasty had 40 spots, but there weren't many Sky Origin stage experts competing for the Divine Dragon ranking. In fact, there weren't even 10 people from each province. Naturally, there were a few people who directly entered the second round. This wasn't because there were too few Sky Origin stage experts in the Thunderfire dynasty, but mainly because the Spirit Cultivator sect had barged into the Imperial Palace a while ago. They were afraid that the first Spirit Cultivator conference was a trap set up for the Sky Origin stage experts, so the Sky Origin stage experts of the various sects didn't come. Of course, there was an exception, and that was the Hall Master of the Ultimate Saber Hall, Fu Yingxi. This person knew that there was a tiger in the mountain, but he still went to the mountain. However, in the eyes of the other sects, this was also good. At least there were people who went to investigate the background of the Thunderfire dynasty. Other than him, most of the Sky Origin stage experts who came to the Imperial capital to participate in the first Spirit Cultivator conference were actually rogue cultivators. There were also a few veteran experts who had been in seclusion for a long time. It seemed that being in seclusion couldn't hide their desire for fame. Perhaps the closer one's lifespan was to the end, the more some people cared about being famous for eternity. In addition, there were more than 10 experts from the Starfall dynasty, Northern Wei dynasty, and the 6 kingdoms of the western region. All the Sky Origin stage experts added up to less than 100 people. Of course, it was rare to be able to gather so many Sky Origin stage experts. Even if he could only look at them from afar, he would be satisfied with his life. Suddenly, the corner of Ling Shiqi's eyes twitched. He actually saw a familiar yet unfamiliar name at the end of the list, Western Desolate Province's rogue cultivator, Chu Hezheng. They did not have the strength to fight against the oneness of heaven and man realm experts. At first, many spirit cultivators were dissatisfied and were shouting why the spirit astral realm was not listed separately. In fact, this was also deliberately done by Ling Shiqi. First of all, the spirit astral realm was a realm that was neither high nor low. Although it was considered an expert, it did not have much ruling power. More importantly, most of the members of the underworld Ling Shiqi were at the spirit astral realm. He did not want the people of the underworld to be exposed to the public. Ling Shiqi firmly believed that all the members of the underworld were favored by the heavens. In addition, he had obtained the inheritance of the underworld. He was not boasting. If the spirit astral realm was listed separately, the people of the underworld would probably be listed on the dragon list. This was a great opportunity to become famous, but once you were listed on the dragon list, most of your information would be leaked and your whereabouts would be noticed. Instead, you would be restrained. Moreover, the people of the underworld had multiple identities and could not be investigated. If there were any clues, the consequences would be unimaginable. Speaking of the underworld, Ling Shiqi had already completed 2 of the conditions for the underworld to be upgraded again. Now, he only needed to recruit a member of the 10 halls at the level of Yama before the underworld could continue to be upgraded. Now, the candidates he was looking for were Wu Diao, Di Chuan, Bing Sheng, and Lian Yi. The talents of these 4 people were still slightly inferior to those of the Delta Origi. Wu Diao and Di Chuan were a little older than them. As for Bing Sheng and Lian Yi, their cultivation progress was a little slow. Of course, this was relative to the level of the Delta Origi, so Ling Shiqi was still a little uncertain. Putting down the list, Ling Shiqi closed his eyes and went through all the important things to pay attention to in the second round. Finally, he opened his eyes, which were shining brightly. "Come in." He Feichen immediately pushed the door open and entered. "Sir." Ling Shiqi said, "Pass down the order that all the preparations for the second round of the World First Spiritual Cultivator Conference must be arranged properly. It will begin in 3 days." "Yes, sir." Chapter 757. In recent days, the imperial capital had been unusually lively, even more so than Lei Qingjuan's birthday banquet. The number of people who could participate in the second round of the first Spirit Cultivator Conference was actually not many. There were only a little over 1,000 people, but the attention these people brought was simply too high. It could be said that it was unprecedentedly high. In order to witness the first Spirit Cultivator Conference, there were even more people who came to witness it. This was a grand event that the Thunderfire dynasty had never seen in many years. At this time, the imperial capital could be said to be packed. The first Spirit Cultivator Conference was already lively enough, but the Heavenly Dynasty suddenly announced that they were going to set up the Phoenix dance roll to include all the peerless beauties in the world. When this news came out, it was like a heavy bomb had been thrown into the water. Who didn't love beauties in the world? If the Phoenix dance roll listed all the beauties in the world, even ordinary people would have the chance to see a beauty. That was a great blessing. Moreover, all the beautiful women went crazy. The Phoenix dance roll did not compare one's background or cultivation, but only their beauty. There was no lack of other things in this world, but there were countless women who thought that their beauty was unparalleled. When the news of the Phoenix dance roll came out, there was a large number of women who wanted to sign up. The scene was even more spectacular than the registration for the first Spirit Cultivator Conference. Because beauties were naturally surrounded by a large number of suitors, and there were even more people who wanted to feast their eyes, there were more men than women who signed up. Everyone thought that the Thunderfire dynasty setting up the Dragon Roll and Phoenix Dance Roll at the same time was already grand enough, but they never thought that another imperial decree would be passed down. The current emperor of the Thunderfire dynasty was going to choose a concubine from the Phoenix Dance Roll. This was simply a great opportunity to reach the heavens in a single step, to become a phoenix from a branch. Not only were there many women who almost fainted from madness, but there were also many disciples of large factions, women from large families, and even many women from top sects who were scrambling like ducks. However, the upper echelons of the various large factions were doing their best to restrain their disciples, because they could all see that this was a trap. The Phoenix Dance rankings had clearly pushed numerous peerless beauties to the heart of the struggle. They could imagine how many young geniuses would fight over the favor of those beauties in the future, and it would also lead to countless conflicts and struggles. As for becoming an imperial concubine, it meant that the faction had sided with the Thunderfire dynasty and would definitely be viewed as an enemy by other sections. In the end, they could only rely on the Thunderfire dynasty. What price did the Thunderfire dynasty pay? He didn't have to pay anything, but instead, he got a few beauties and a sect. This was really a good deal. Those who could see through this were all admiring the methods of the Thunderblaze dynasty. However, the women did not care at all. What they wanted was to be the most beautiful woman in the world. They did not care about such things. Thus, these 2 days, the imperial capital was unprecedentedly lively. Several grand events were held at the same time, and the lively atmosphere almost ignited the air. On the third day, the atmosphere had reached its peak because the world's first Spirit Cultivator Conference was about to begin. The location of the Spirit Cultivator of each realm was also different. The low-level Spirit Cultivator below the 4 realms of heaven were all in the outer city, and all of them were the most outstanding young disciples of this generation in the various provinces. Most of them were at the 9th layer of the Spirit Transformation realm, and many of them were half a step into the Spirit Pulse realm. There were even some who purposely suppressed their cultivation to prevent themselves from breaking through to the Spirit Pulse realm in order to obtain a spot on the Hidden Dragon ranking and become famous. At this time, there were already 10 huge arenas set up in the outer city's arena. Each arena had a barrier, and there were experts at the Spirit Aperture realm overseeing them to prevent any accidents from happening. Those who were able to reach this stage were all genius disciples. Of course, they could not have their lives in danger. Otherwise, it would be difficult to explain to the Spirit Cultivator sect. There were only about 300 Spirit Cultivators in the second round, so they were divided into 2 matches. The winner would advance, and the loser would leave, until the final 108 people were chosen. After that, there was another round of challenges. These 108 people could challenge each other, and the more victories they had, the higher their ranking would be. At this time, there were already countless people gathered in the outer city to watch the battle. There were also many people nearby who had opened a bet and were opportunistic. The Spirit Aperture Realms arena was in the inner city, and the rules were the same as before. The unity of heaven and man realm did not allow outsiders to watch the battle. It was not because of any other reason, but because the destructive power of the unity of heaven and man realm was very strong. Even if they used formations, they could not guarantee that there would be no accidents. Thus, they decided to let these people fight in a separate space. That place was the Minor Five Elements Chaos Paradise. Previously, after Ling Shiqi had accidentally damaged it, the Thunderblaze dynasty had repaired it. Now, it could be put to good use again, allowing these Unity of Heaven realm experts to display their prowess in battle. Because of this, others could not watch the battle. As for the Sky Origin realm experts' battle method, it was even more special. There were more than 100 Sky Origin realm experts participating in the battle. If they were allowed to fight continuously, the Imperial capital would probably be destroyed by them. Thus, the Sky Origin realm experts all used mental projections to fight. The Thunderblaze dynasty set up a formation, and the two sides fighting would enter as mental projections. The formation could create a battle strength similar to the original body, and this method would determine the victor. The most important thing in the Sky Origin realm was the comprehension of the origin energy of heaven and earth. This method could also fully display their abilities, so no one had any objections. At this moment, Ling Shiqi was standing in the Minor Five Elements Chaos Paradise as the disciple of the Wave Island Sword Monarch. Outside the secret realm, there was also a Ling Shiqi monitoring the battle between the Sky Origin realm experts. As for the one outside, it was just a projection of Ling Shiqi. As long as he did not make a move and did not speak carelessly, nothing would happen. Ling Shiqi looked around and saw that the Minor Five Elements Chaos Paradise was very different from the last time. This time, it was not divided into the Five Elements region. Instead, it was divided into 10 huge regions, each of which was gray and hazy. These 10 areas were equivalent to 10 arenas, and each time, 10 battles would be held at the same time. There were more than 350 Sky Origin realm experts around Ling Shiqi. Originally, there should be 360 of them, but there were some people who were unable to participate due to special circumstances, such as Tang Haoquang and the others. Ling Shiqi looked around and saw that he was the only one who was in the middle stage of Sky Origin realm. Other than him, 60% of them were in the late stage of Sky Origin realm, and 40% were in the peak stage of Sky Origin realm. This Minor Five Elements Chaos Paradise was different. Even if they did not make a move, everyone had gathered more or less energy around them, and only he had the least. Thus, Ling Shiqi attracted the attention of many people. At this moment, the Dark Thunder Guard's commander, Heavenly Venerable Black Flame, and the Discipline Commission's commander, Monarch Cloud Shuttle, appeared at the same time. They said straightforwardly, "Since everyone is here, let's begin." Everyone's breathing froze. The world's #1 Spirit Cultivator Conference, which was the focus of everyone's attention, had finally begun. Chapter 758. Monarch Cloud Shuttle flicked his finger, and wisps of clouds spread out, covering the 10 regions. 2 names appeared in each region, and those were the names of the people who were about to fight. Ling Shiqi looked up and saw his name. He muttered, "It's my turn so soon." Then, he walked straight to the region in the distance. At the same time, everyone's eyes fell on him. This person is only at the middle stage of the unity of heaven and man realm? Immediately, many people were doubtful. He is indeed at the middle stage of the unity of heaven and man realm. Looking at his young age, it's rare for him to be at this stage. I wonder which county he came from. To be able to come to the imperial capital at the middle stage of the unity of heaven and man realm, it's either that county has no one, or this person's strength is outstanding and comparable to the late stage. I'm looking forward to it. Hearing the discussion, Chang Fengyu, Huang Xiuan, and the others from Donglin County sneered. They knew best that this Ling Shiqi was only in his 20s. His combat strength was close to the peak of the unity of heaven and man realm. It was far beyond everyone's imagination. However, they did not say anything. They wanted to see the shocked expressions of others, just like how they were before. Ling Shiqi's opponent was called Meng Xian. Others might not know the details of others, but Ling Shiqi, as one of the 4 chiefs of the First Spirit Cultivator Conference, naturally knew everything. He instantly recalled all the information about Meng Xian. This person came from the Chenghuan County in the northern part of the Thunderblaze dynasty. He was an elder of a first-rate sect and had a cultivation at the late stage of the unity of heaven and man realm. This was Meng Xian's best saber technique, and he had a 7th-tier saber in his hand. His strength was not ordinary. Ling Shiqi stepped lightly and arrived at the center of the region, waiting with his head held high. Meng Xian was a thin person who looked very capable. He walked over step by step, and a biting cold saber intent soared into the air and locked onto Ling Shiqi. Ling Shiqi smiled brightly, revealing his white teeth. "Junior Ling Shiqi, please enlighten me." Meng Xian did not underestimate his opponent. He was very clear that those who could come to the imperial capital were definitely not weaklings. The fact that this young man in front of him could stand here with the cultivation of the middle stage of the unity of heaven and man realm meant that he definitely had something outstanding about him. He clenched his fist, and a crescent blade that carried the aura of Muyuan appeared. The blade's aura soared into the sky, and its aura reached the rainbow. On the other hand, Ling Shiqi still took out his level 5 spiritual sword, which looked extremely shabby in front of his opponent's level 7 precious weapon. Meng Xian's face darkened as well, and he said with dissatisfaction, "Aren't you looking down on us too much?" Ling Shiqi shrugged and said, "Senior, please don't misunderstand. I'm very poor and only have this much spiritual energy. Please don't blame me." "Humph, that's enough. Hurry up and start." Meng Xian was a little impatient. He waved his hand and said, "I'm not bullying you because your cultivation is low. I'll let you make the first move." "Really?" Ling Shiqi raised his eyebrows in surprise. "Of course. Then this junior will respectfully accept." Ling Shiqi cupped his hands, and then the blade of his sword trembled. A terrifying sword intent soared into the sky, stirring up the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. In an instant, the void froze, and the sky and earth were enveloped by endless sword intent. The sword intent turned into a huge shadow. The shadow stepped forward with the sword, as if it had merged with heaven and earth. This was the true unity of heaven and man. Ling Shiqi's first move was a sword immortal. As soon as the sword immortal appeared, the space in the entire area trembled slightly, as if even the void was about to shatter. Meng Xian's expression became very stiff. He never dreamed that Ling Shiqi's first move would be such a powerful attack. It was so powerful that he didn't have any confidence in receiving it. The reason why he let Ling Shiqi make the first move was not that he underestimated Ling Shiqi, but that he wanted to see Ling Shiqi's moves first. Who would have thought that he would be in danger before he could see his moves? Meng Xian's saber moved, and endless wood energy rose. The saber's momentum cut through the void as if it had the power of 10,000 caddies. However, this saber was nothing in front of the sword immortal. In just one exchange, the sword immortal's shadow directly shattered Meng Xian's saber momentum. The remaining force did not decrease as it pointed its sword at Meng Xian's dantian. At this moment, Meng Xian's expression finally changed drastically. Even though that slash earlier wasn't his trump card, he had fully unleashed the strength of the advanced stage of the unity of heaven and man realm. How could it be as weak as paper? Unfortunately, it was too late for him to counterattack. There were only 2 things he could do. One was to resist with all his might, and the other was to admit defeat. Meng Xian did not hesitate to shout loudly, "I admit defeat." After he shouted these 3 words, Ling Shiqi's sword style changed. The sword immortal's shadow suddenly disappeared, and the sword intent that filled the sky also dissipated as if it had never appeared. Meng Xian could not help but feel relieved. Just now, he actually felt a trace of threat to his life. However, at the same time, his old face turned red. His cultivation was clearly higher than his opponent's, but he had been defeated so quickly. He had lost all his face. Meng Xian looked around and saw that there were indeed a lot of eyes watching him and Ling Shiqi. He coughed awkwardly a few times and left dejectedly. In fact, those people were basically looking at Ling Shiqi. Everyone's eyes were more or less filled with surprise. Ling Shiqi's sword immortal was extremely stunning. Some of the people present were also sword cultivators. They were the most shocked because they could see that Ling Shiqi's attainments in the sword Dao had even exceeded his own realm. This meant that Ling Shiqi's future cultivation path would be smooth sailing without too many bottlenecks. This alone was enough to make many people envious. He defeated Meng Xian in one move. This person's strength is probably stronger than many late-stage Unity of Heaven and Man realm cultivators. Late stage? Even those at the peak of Unity of Heaven and Man realm can't do this. Those who can enter the second round are really capable. This person can't be underestimated. A few sword cultivators in the crowd gathered together. Everyone, you all saw it. Sword heart illuminated, sword intent pure. His sword Dao is very pure. It won't be long before he surpasses me. Which sect is he from? Why haven't I heard of him before? Yes, we have to ask around. At this moment, Heavenly Venerable He Yen said, Ling Shiqi wins. He even looked at Ling Shiqi a few more times. For some reason, he felt like he had seen Ling Shiqi somewhere before. Ling Shiqi cupped his hands at Heavenly Venerable He Yen and walked to the corner of the crowd. Although he had used several secret techniques to hide his aura, he was not sure if he could really avoid Heavenly Venerable He Yen's gaze. It was better to ignore Heavenly Venerable He Yen. Ling Shiqi also knew that although he had easily defeated Meng Xian with his current sword Dao strength, there were no weaklings in the following rounds. At most, he could hold on for 2 more rounds. If he wanted to make it to the Flying Dragon list with only 36 spots, he had to use other methods. Chapter 759. Ling Shiqi was the first to finish his battle. At this time, the other 9 battles had just begun. He quietly watched the battles. There were not many opportunities to watch so many oneness of nature experts fight at the same time. Last time, when he watched the battle between Huang Xiuan and Cheng Fengyu, he realized something, so he cherished this opportunity even more. There were more than 300 oneness of nature experts present. There would be more than 170 to 80 battles. This was a good opportunity for Ling Shiqi. In the following period of time, rare experts fought one after another. None of the minor chaos paradise remained calm. Everywhere was filled with violent elemental spiritual energy of heaven and earth. It was not until late at night that these experts finally finished their battles. Ling Shiqi's eyes were faintly blurred. He had watched all the battles. Because there were 10 battles going on at the same time, he could only spread out his spiritual energy to spread out more than half of the 5 elements chaos paradise. However, this also consumed his spiritual energy very quickly. However, he also gained a lot. The battles of the experts gave him a lot of inspiration and enlightenment. He also had a deeper understanding of the control of the elemental spiritual energy. After 1 round of battles, half of the experts were eliminated. At this moment, there were more than 170 winners. Among them, 80% were at the peak of oneness of nature. It should be known that each of these people was qualified to reach the sky origin stage. They were also absolute leaders in their own sects or forces. Any one of them was a big figure that could shake a region. However, it was very difficult for people of this level to be on the Flying Dragon list. There were only 36 people on the Flying Dragon list. There were nearly 200 people here. Moreover, these people had been in high positions for a long time and were more or less arrogant. It was conceivable that the following battles would only be more intense. At this time, Monarch Cloud Shuttle said, "Today's winners will enter the next round. The battles will start in 2 days. Let's call it a day." Heavenly Venerable He Yen formed several hand seals and opened up a huge portal. Everyone immediately left the minor 5 elements chaos paradise. Ling Shiqi was about to sneak back to the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guards, but 2 people stopped him. They didn't come over directly, but released a faint killing intent from afar to shroud him. Ling Shiqi glanced at them from the corner of his eyes and found that they were quietly making a few gestures to him. His heart skipped a beat. It was a secret code that only the higher-ups of the Blood Garment Pavilion knew. He recalled that there were indeed 2 experts from the Blood Garment Pavilion participating in this round of battles. They were Green Ghost and 2 Exian, who were ranked among the 9 great Blood Garment assassins of the Blood Garment Pavilion. Ling Shiqi had specifically looked for these 2 people in the minor 5-element Chaos Grotto Heaven, but there was no one wearing the clothes of the Blood Cloak Pavilion. He also did not find anyone who cultivated the Blood Cloak Pavilion's techniques. However, he vaguely remembered that the 2 people in front of him seemed to have been eliminated. One of them transmitted a message to Ling Shiqi, "Master Lang, I am 2 Exian, he is Qin Gui." "Hee, Master Lang, you and I have a lot of history." Qin Gui laughed. Ling Shiqi also remembered that when he had just left the Blood Fog Island, Delta Origi and the others were all taken in as disciples by the 3 Tianyuan Realm Masters, and he handed them over to the 9 great Blood Garment assassins. At that time, Qin Gui had tried to fight for him, but he was rejected by Leng Yu. Later, Leng Yu was rejected by Wu Xiang. At that time, Ling Shiqi was still a junior disciple in the Spirit Transformation Realm. Now, Qin Gui had called him Master Leng. It could be seen that Ling Shiqi's growth was rapid. Of course, he was not arrogant. He secretly transmitted a message, "So it's you 2 senior brothers. This is not the place to talk. Please follow me." After the 3 of them left the minor chaos paradise, they quickly walked into the streets of the imperial capital. Following Ling Shiqi, they quickly arrived at an extremely secluded place. Ling Shiqi waved his hand and laid down a few layers of restrictive spells. At this moment, Green Ghost and 2 Exian's appearances changed drastically. In an instant, they turned into the Blood Robe Pavilion's assassins, clad in blood-red robes and wearing strange masks. The one with the ferocious green ghost on his mask was Qin Gui. He said, "The Blood Garment Pavilion's participation in the World First Spirit Cultivator Conference has already made many forces unhappy. Therefore, we did not make a big fuss about it, nor did we use our full strength. Just treat it as a formality." Hearing this, Ling Shiqi nodded. "I see. May I know why you 2 senior brothers have called me here?" "Actually, it's not that we want to find you. There is a master who wants to see you." "That's right." "Master? Who is it?" Ling Shiqi was puzzled. To be called a master by Qin Gui and 2 Exian, it was probably only the pavilion master and a few others. But now that the imperial capital was heavily guarded, even a Sky Origin Realm expert would not be able to sneak in. Who could it be? Suddenly, a voice sounded. "Good disciple, don't you want to see your master?" Ling Shiqi raised his eyebrows. He already knew who it was. As expected, the space in front of him distorted. A plump man with a small mustache and a small round hat appeared in front of him. This was the wandering cultivator from the Western Wilderness Province, Chu Hezheng. He was also the Blood Garment Pavilion's new Sky Origin Realm expert, Wu Xiang. "Congratulations, Master, for breaking through to the Sky Origin Realm and standing at the peak of the strong." Ling Shiqi immediately congratulated. Wu Xiang stroked his mustache. "Kid, you flatter me. Although the Sky Origin Realm is not weak, there are many people in this world who are stronger than me." "What peak of the strong?" "You're still far from it. I firmly believe that one day, Master, you will reach this level." "Tut, tut, we haven't seen each other for a long time. Your mouth is getting better and better." Wu Xiang smiled and turned his head. "You 2 go first. I have something to say to this kid." Qin Gui and 2 Exian bowed and said, "Master Wu Xiang, please. We'll take our leave first." Then they turned and left. Wu Xiang came over and patted Ling Shiqi's shoulder. Ling Shiqi immediately felt a strange power rushing through his body, but he did not resist. Hiss! Wu Xiang suddenly withdrew his hand and gasped. Kid, your strength is so terrifying. I'm afraid you're not weaker than the peak of the oneness of heaven and man realm. With your current strength, it's easy for you to become one of the 9 underworld blood cloak assassins. How did you cultivate? To be honest, Master, I actually had another opportunity to obtain a mysterious secret realm. That's why my cultivation progressed so fast. Ling Shiqi looked at Wu Xiang and had another idea in his mind. That was to pull Wu Xiang into the underworld. Wu Xiang was originally the bloody kill duo of the Blood Cloak Pavilion. Now that he had broken through to the Sky Origin realm, he could definitely obtain the inheritance of the 10 kings of hell. Moreover, as Ling Shiqi's master, Wu Xiang was indeed somewhat trustworthy. There was no problem in pulling him into the underworld. Secret realm? Wu Xiang's eyes lit up. No wonder. You're really lucky. No wonder you're my disciple. Of course. Master, I'll take you to the secret realm to have a look. Can I? Wu Xiang was puzzled. In his opinion, the secret realm was not a place that could be entered at will. Ling Shiqi pressed Wu Xiang's arm and said, Master, don't resist. He first opened the territory system and summoned Wu Xiang into the underworld. Then, with a thought, he disappeared with Wu Xiang. After the two of them entered the underworld, Ling Shiqi stared in the direction of the Fengdu necropolis. As expected, an enormous amount of netherworld energy soared into the sky and enveloped Wu Xiang. Imperial title, Dongyuan Wu Xiang Ghost Emperor. Chapter 760. Ling Shiqi was stunned for a moment. He thought that Wu Xiang would at least be at the level of the 10 kings of hell. However, Wu Xiang had obtained the inheritance of the ghost emperors of 5 directions. This was something that Ling Shiqi did not expect. However, this was still a good thing. Wu Xiang had obtained the inheritance of the ghost emperors of 5 directions, so his strength would naturally increase by leaps and bounds. This was also beneficial to Ling Shiqi. While Wu Xiang was obtaining the inheritance, he went straight to the end of Fengdu necropolis. Here, he found the requirements to upgrade the territory, Mansion of the Dead current level, Tier 4. Mansion of the Dead upgrade requirements, 1. Recruit one of the 10 kings of hell, 1/10. 2. Collect 10 high-level souls, 10/10. 3. 80,000 system coins. Upgrade requirements met. Do you want to upgrade? No. Ling Shiqi was not in a hurry to upgrade the Mansion of the Dead. Once it was upgraded, the Mansion of the Dead would automatically close. At the very least, he had to wait until Wu Xiang finished receiving the inheritance. The last time the Mansion of the Dead was upgraded, it took 10 days. This time, it would take even longer. If it was in the past, Ling Shiqi could only wait slowly. However, there was a better way now. Ling Shiqi opened the system shop and chose an item, Basic Territory Upgrade Card. This was an item that he was qualified to buy after obtaining all the system privileges. It could be used to shorten the time needed to upgrade the territory. Each Basic Territory Upgrade Card could shorten the time needed to upgrade by 10 days. When it was time to upgrade, he just needed to buy a certain number of upgrade cards and he could upgrade the Mansion of the Dead directly. Ling Shiqi then went to Wu Xiang's side. He estimated that it would not take long for Wu Xiang to receive the inheritance. Those who could break through to the ethereal stage definitely had high comprehension. The higher the comprehension, the faster the speed of receiving the inheritance. He stood beside Wu Xiang. After about half an hour, the ghostly aura around Wu Xiang suddenly dissipated, revealing Wu Xiang's body. However, Wu Xiang's current state was a little strange. He was clearly standing there, but in Ling Shiqi's eyes, Wu Xiang felt illusory. It was as if he did not exist in this space. With a flip of Wu Xiang's palm, the spiritual energy in the underworld suddenly erupted, and a terrifying aura suddenly appeared. This aura was like sword intent, saber intent, fist energy, palm energy, finger energy. Ling Shiqi's expression was solemn. He seemed to have felt the all-encompassing power in Wu Xiang's hand. The aura of Formless was illusory and all-encompassing. This strange feeling made Leng Shiqi very uncomfortable. Wu Xiang's heart was filled with shock. He did not conceal his astonishment and said, "Disciple, how did you discover this secret realm?" Too mysterious, too powerful, too bizarre. Leng Shiqi could not explain the origin of the underworld, so he changed the topic. "Shizuan, what kind of inheritance did you receive? Is it a cultivation technique?" "No, it's not a cultivation technique." Wu Xiang shook his head and said, "I can't say for sure. Those things were directly imprinted in my mind, as if I already knew them. To be specific, it's a bit like the sword steels in the Sword Dao Mountain." The sword steels of the Sword Dao Mountain. Leng Shiqi had some understanding of this. The Sword Path Mountain was one of the top sects in the Eight Desolates weapon path, and it was located in the Starfall dynasty. This sect was very strange because the Sword Path Mountain was a sword cultivation sect. They only had the inheritance of mental cultivation techniques, but they didn't have any inheritance of sword skills. A top sect that nurtured sword cultivators did not have any sword skills. It sounded unbelievable. There were thousands of sword steels in the Sword Dao Mountain. Each sword steel had a sword mark on it. These sword marks were left behind by the Heaven Origin Stage cultivators of the Sword Dao Mountain. They contained the cultivators' understanding of the Sword Dao. The disciples of the Sword Dao Mountain only learned mental cultivation techniques. If you wanted sword skills, no one would teach you. You could only rely on yourself to comprehend the sword steels and comprehend a sword skill that was suitable for you. Only the Sword Dao Mountain had this method of nurturing disciples in the world, so the strength of the Sword Dao Mountain was fluctuating. Sometimes, there would be several peerless geniuses in the same generation. For example, hundreds of years ago, the Sword Dao Mountain had 5 great sword masters who shocked the world. They were ranked second only to the 4 saint spiritual realms in the world. However, sometimes, there might be no genius disciples for several generations, leading to a slow decline. However, the Sword Dao Mountain had never fallen out of the world's sect rankings. It was obvious that their foundation was extremely deep. Wu Xiang actually said that the inheritance he obtained was similar to the sword steels of the Sword Dao Mountain. In other words, the inheritance of the underworld did not directly give him a cultivation technique or spiritual skill. He still had to comprehend it himself. As for what he could comprehend, it would depend on his own ability. Leng Shiqi understood in his heart. Although he had yet to obtain the underworld's inheritance, knowing this gave him a little more confidence. Wu Xiang then threw a jade slip over and said, "This mystic realm is yours. The inheritance is also from you. This is not a small favor. In addition, although I am your master, I have not taught you anything. This jade slip contains my life's knowledge and my experience of breaking through to the heavenly origin realm. Your path is similar to mine, so it should be useful." Leng Shiqi did not stand on ceremony and directly took a few glances. This was something he had always wanted. He casually glanced at it and discovered that the method for Wu Xiang to break through to the heavenly origin realm was actually the returning ruins. Wu Xiang and Leng Shiqi's cultivation path was indeed quite similar. They both learned a variety of things and dabbled in all kinds of spiritual skills. There were very few people who walked this path. After all, everyone understood the principle of being greedy and not proficient. Furthermore, this type of spirit cultivator was very strong in the same realm, but breaking through to the next realm was extremely difficult. The further one went, the more difficult it was. Wu Xiang could also be considered to be extremely talented. Now, he no longer knew any sword or blade techniques. He had already classified all his moves and spiritual techniques into a special kind of power. This power was all-encompassing and impossible to fathom. Leng Shiqi muttered to himself for a moment. In fact, there was one heavenly origin realm expert who walked this path, and that was Li Ju Cheng's ancestor. He cultivated the Li family's ancestor's 16 heavens transformations. The Li family's ancestor also learned everything. His method of breaking through to the heavenly origin realm was to use every spiritual skill to the extreme. This was completely different from Wu Xiang's method, but it was still a success. Therefore, everyone's path was different. Ling Shiqi would also walk a path that was completely his own. Ling Shiqi put down the jade scroll. Master, we have been here for a long time. Let's go out first. Alright, let's go. After the two of them went out, they chatted for a while. Wuxiang even specifically told Ling Shiqi to wait until the end of the first Spirit Cultivator Conference. After sending Wuxiang off, Ling Shiqi turned around and returned to the underworld. He opened the territory system and chose to upgrade territory. Upgrading the territory requires 100 natural days. During the upgrade period, you will not be able to use the territory. Do you want to upgrade? Ling Shiqi smiled and immediately exchanged 10 beginner-level territory upgrade cards and chose yes. Chapter 761. Primary Territory Upgrade Card detected. Upgrading the territory requires no time. Do you wish to upgrade? Yes. As soon as Ling Shiqi's voice fell, the entire underworld shook and black gas billowed. He spread out his spiritual power and instantly discovered that the area of the underworld was rapidly expanding. The original buildings were also expanding proportionally. The most peculiar thing was that the entrance to the 6 paths of reincarnation had separated itself from the Fengdu necropolis and opened up a unique small space. The most noteworthy thing was that small spaces had appeared in the newly expanded area of the underworld, layer upon layer leading to the underground. A name was imprinted in Ling Shiqi's mind. 18 levels of hell. Ling Shiqi was deep in the underworld. The surrounding time seemed to have sped up countless times. Everything was changing at an unimaginable speed. Soon, the movements in the underworld suddenly stopped. He immediately saw a system prompt. Territory upgrade successful. Ling Shiqi immediately looked through the territory system. In the past, he would obtain some abilities every time the underworld was upgraded. After the last upgrade, he could move freely in the underworld. He also had the convenient ability of the Netherlamp illusion. This time, he obtained the ability of the underworld's gate. Ling Shiqi's eyes lit up. This gate of the underworld could finally directly increase his combat power. The gate of the underworld had 2 uses. One was to allow Ling Shiqi to use a portion of the underworld's power, which could be considered as a means to increase his combat power. The second was to summon the gate of the underworld. When the gate of the underworld appeared, the gate of hell opened, and the surrounding hundreds of miles would become hell. According to the rank of spiritual skills, the gate of the underworld was definitely comparable to a rank 8 spiritual skill, or even higher. This time, the underworld's upgrade finally had the ability to fight. This surprised Ling Shiqi. Moreover, the gate of the underworld was a new ability he had obtained. It could be used in his new identity as the disciple of the Wave Sword Monarch. With his swordsmanship alone, he could at most survive the next round of the World First Spiritual Cultivator Conference. If he could use the power of the underworld, it would naturally be very different. There was still a chance for him to enter the Flying Dragon list. However, there was no way such extreme energy could have come from the Wave Islet Sword Monarch's inheritance. It would be hard to say if someone were to look into it. However, it didn't matter. His participation in the world's first Spirit Cultivator Conference was just a spur-of-the-moment decision. At worst, he could just make this identity disappear in the future. Following that, he circled around the underworld and found that the souls were no longer directly sent into the 6 paths of reincarnation. Some of them would be sent into the 18 levels of hell, where they would be subjected to endless torture before they had a chance to reincarnate. This was to pay for the sins of his past life. Finally, Ling Shiqi looked at the conditions for the next upgrade of the Mansion of the Dead. Underworld Territory's current level, Tier 5, requirements for upgrading the territory of the underworld, 1. Recruiting 2 Yama Kings of the 10 Palaces. 2. Collect a top-level soul, 0 out of 1. 3160000 system coins. Seeing these 3 conditions, Ling Shiqi felt a headache coming on. First of all, the first condition was for him to summon 2 Yama kings of the 10 palaces or even higher-ranked members of the underworld. Wu Xiang was already like a blind cat running into a dead mouse. Where was he going to find 2 more? Just this condition alone would be enough to hold him back for a long time. And the second condition was to collect a top-level soul. What was a top-level soul? One must know that the soul of an expert in the unity of heaven and man realm was only a high-level soul. A top-level soul could only be the soul of an expert in the heavenly origin realm. Ling Shiqi believed that his strength was not much weaker than an expert in the heavenly origin realm. However, it was still extremely difficult to kill an expert in the heavenly origin realm. At this moment, Ling Shiqi could not help but think of the 1,000 illusion swordmaster. If he had died a little later, wouldn't he have gotten this top-level soul? As for the third condition, it was not a big deal. With his current status, 160,000 system coins was not a big problem. However, it would be a long time before the next upgrade of the Mansion of the Dead. Since that was the case, Ling Shiqi was not in a hurry. He collected his emotions and left the Mansion of the Dead to return to the Dark Thunder Guard's headquarters. Fortunately, his doppelganger was not detected and a report was placed in his study. After a day of competition, half of the participants in each realm were eliminated. This caused quite a stir in the outside world. This was because there were indeed some people who were unexpectedly eliminated. There were even a few people who were thought to be able to compete for a place in the dragon rankings who were eliminated. It could not be helped. The participants were randomly selected. It was not impossible for 2 experts of the same realm to meet each other in advance. When the results came out, it became a hot topic before tea and dinner. After the first round of competition, the people who participated in the gambling were naturally happy and sad. The imperial capital was now more lively than 2 days ago. Ling Shiqi also saw information about himself in the report. The Dark Thunder Guards thought that it was necessary to investigate his background. They even sent people out to sea to find information about the Wave Islet Sword Monarch. Ling Shiqi did not know whether to laugh or cry. It was not good for his subordinates to be too hardworking and capable. He silently checked this report. Of course, it was impossible to investigate. There was nothing else worth paying attention to. He closed his eyes and rested. After 2 days, Ling Shiqi and the others came to the Minor 5 Elements Chaos Paradise again. This time, the number of people was reduced by half. After today, it would be reduced by half again. Most of the people who could come here again were great experts at the unity of heaven and man realm. Any one of them was an existence that people looked up to. There were only a few people who could definitely obtain a place in the Flying Dragon rankings. As for the remaining people, the difference in strength was not very big. It would depend on whether they were willing to use their trump cards. There were about 4 people who were recognized by everyone to be in the Flying Dragon rankings. They were Wei Zhen from the 6th Direction Spiritual Region. He was one of the personal disciples of the 6th Direction Spiritual Sovereign. Ever since he participated in the first Spirit Cultivator Conference, he had easily defeated all the opponents. No one could force him to use his true strength. In the eyes of others, he was most likely to obtain first place in the Flying Dragon rankings. There was also Cui Linglong from the mysterious 10,000 Laws sect. She was a rare beauty and the most outstanding disciple of the previous generation. She was also one of the candidates for the next sect master. It was worth mentioning that she had also signed up for the Phoenix Dance ranking selection. Her popularity was quite high. In addition, Hua Feiyuan, an expert from the 5 levels sect, Liuhua Palace, was also very strong. He had the heaven-scorching poison fire, a variant of the fire element. No one dared to take it head-on. As for the last person, he was a devil cultivator from the Purgatory Demon sect. No one knew his name, only his title, Black Devil Hand. Those who lost to him were all seriously injured. If it was not for the fact that there were people watching, they would have died. These 4 people were top-notch in terms of status and strength. They had taken 4 places in the Flying Dragon rankings by default. Chapter 762. Therefore, only 32 out of the 36 spots on the Flying Dragon list were actually being fought for. Leng Shiqi's appearance attracted some attention, but it was just a casual glance. Although his victory was unexpected, his opponents in this round were all stronger than the previous one. In the eyes of others, this was the end of his journey. It was already very impressive for a mid-stage union of heaven and man to make it this far. Leng Shiqi did not care about other people's gazes. He narrowed his eyes and waited for his opponent. Not long after, Heavenly Venerable Black Flame and Monarch Cloud Shuttle appeared. They were ready to start without saying a word. Immediately, 20 names appeared in each of the 10 regions. This time, Leng Shiqi's name was not on the list. However, a noteworthy name appeared. It was Black Devil Hand from the Purgatory Demon Sect. This was an expert who was qualified to fight for the top spot on the Flying Dragon list. He instantly attracted everyone's attention. His opponent was Yunliangji, the sect master of the first-rate sect Cloud Peak. He was at the peak of union of heaven and man and was not weak. However, he encountered Black Devil Hand one after another. He shook his head and could only blame himself for being unlucky. Even Yunliangji himself thought that he could not defeat Black Devil Hand. Of course, he would not admit defeat. Even if he lost, he had to lose with dignity. He cupped his fists and said, "I'm Yunliangji, the sect master of the Cloud Peak sect. I heard that you have a high cultivation. I'd like to see it for myself." Black Devil Hand's face darkened. He sneered and said, "You will see it for yourself." Yunliangji's expression turned cold. He waved his arms and misty clouds surged in the surroundings. They covered the sky and made the minor 5 elements chaos paradise look like a fairyland. A strange weapon was held in his hand. It seemed to have merged with the clouds, making it difficult for others to grasp. A trace of disdain flashed across Black Devil Hand's eyes. He grabbed with his hand as if he was going to tear the sky and shatter the stars. Countless elemental forces began to go berserk. There was even a trace of origin energy of heaven and earth. Yunliangji was shocked. He could not resist Black Devil Hand's demonic palm at all. As the demonic palm approached, the surrounding clouds and mist were swept away in an instant. Yunliangji's face turned red and his blood rushed to his head. His body flew backward, and the odd-shaped weapon in his hand cracked and almost broke. Yunliangji was defeated by the Black Devil Hand in one move. Everyone's expression suddenly changed. They had seen the Black Demon Hand fight before, and he had defeated his opponent in one move. However, Yunliangji was not a small character. He could be considered a powerhouse, but in front of the Black Devil Hand, he was unable to withstand a single blow. The strength of the Black Devil Hand is so terrifying. He seems to have touched the edge of the Sky Origin stage. It won't be long before the Purgatory Demon Sect has another Sky Origin cultivator. That Wei Chu, Yu Linglong, and Hua Fei Yuan are probably not weaker than the Black Demon Hand. These people can be considered to be half a step into the Sky Origin stage. Why are they participating in the first Spirit Cultivator Assembly instead of going into seclusion to break through to the Sky Origin stage? Even if they break through to the Sky Origin stage, they are still at the bottom of the Sky Origin stage. They can't be as impressive in front of us as they are now. That's true. Now that the Flying Dragon leaderboard is within their reach, they can forget about the Divine Dragon leaderboard. It's better to be the head of a chicken than the tail of a phoenix. The Black Demon Hand defeated Yunliangji, who was at the pinnacle of the unity of heaven and man realm, in one move, naturally attracted the shock and discussion of the crowd. Leng Shiqi could not help but be a little surprised. They were both at the unity of heaven and man realm, but the difference in strength was too great. The strength of the 4 Dark Thunder Guards was probably not comparable to the Black Demon Hand. At the same time, Leng Shiqi was calculating in his heart. If he used his full strength, would he be able to defeat the Black Demon Hand? He had many trump cards, but the Black Demon Hand definitely had them too. He really wanted to find an opponent of this level to fight. Soon, his opportunity came. It was his turn in the next round. However, his opponent was not at the level of the Black Demon Hand, but an old acquaintance, Huang Xiuan from the first-class sect of Donglin County, Wuzhou. When Huang Xiuan saw that his opponent was Ling Shiqi, he secretly smiled. He knew that Ling Shiqi was not weak, but he had only reached the pinnacle of the unity of heaven and man realm. Moreover, when they fought in Donglin County, Ling Shiqi was no match for Tang Haoquang. Naturally, he could not defeat Huang Xiuan. Huang Xiuan secretly sighed, "My luck is good." He walked to an empty space, looked at Ling Shiqi in the distance, and said, "Young friend Ling, last time in Donglin County, you and I were deeply regretful that we could not fight. This time, I finally got what I wanted." Ling Shiqi smiled, "Master Huang, you're a master of both sword and saber. Please show mercy." Huang Xiuan grasped the void, and a 7th-level spiritual sword appeared in his hand. When the sword came out, a strange wave was suddenly emitted. The sword's shadow was like the moon, attacking the sky. Ling Shiqi's mind moved, and countless sword chi burst out from the sky and the ground. Some of these sword chi were fierce and violent, some were soft like water, some were like maggots, and some were hidden in the dark, waiting for an opportunity. Hundreds and thousands of different sword chi directly shattered Huang Xiuan's sword shadow. Huang Xiuan exclaimed softly. He found that Ling Shiqi's sword chi was stronger than the last time in Donglin County. It was not that there were more of them, but that the sword intent in the sword chi was sharper and more changeable. This obvious improvement made Huang Xiuan feel a little suffocated. When one reached the realm of the unity of heaven and man realm, both the progress of cultivation and the improvement of combat effectiveness were very slow. For example, Huang Xiuan's 5 sword moves and 5 saber moves were famous in Donglin County, but it was extremely difficult for him to comprehend another sword move. In other words, there was almost no way for him to improve his strength, and it was very difficult for him to go further. However, Ling Shiqi's sword chi was clearly much stronger. It had not been long, and there was such an obvious improvement, which made Huang Xiuan envious. This made Huang Xiuan want to defeat Ling Shiqi with absolute strength, so that he could feel better. He immediately said, "Young friend Ling, I know you have mastered the water and earth sword moves and the magical sword skills of sword immortals and sword gods, but it is not enough to defeat me. You and I are acquaintances, so there is no need for a long battle. Why don't we decide the outcome with one move?" "All right." Ling Shiqi smiled, revealing his white teeth. Huang Xiuan held a 7th-tier saber on both sides, and the saber and the sword struck out at the same time. A dazzling light flashed, like the sun and the moon shining together, illuminating the entire minor 5 elements chaos grotto heaven. The imposing manner that bordered the world made everyone look askance. Ling Shiqi did not strike out with his sword. Suddenly, a black chi rose behind him, and an aura that seemed to come from the netherworld spread out, making the experts of the unity of heaven and man realm feel a chill down their spines. Then, in the black chi, a ghost gate that was hundreds of feet tall loomed, like the opening of the gate of hell. The minor 5 elements chaos grotto heaven was instantly filled with a cold wind and the howling of ghosts. The gate of hell. Chapter 763. The other masters immediately frowned. The gate of the underworld summoned by Ling Shiqi was too gloomy, making people feel as if they were in hell. Even these masters who were in the oneness of heaven and man realm felt a chill run down their spines. Huang Xiuan's hands, which were holding the sword and saber, even trembled slightly. He was not shocked by the power of the gate of the underworld, but by the terrifying aura that struck directly at his soul. That was the aura of death. Anyone would be afraid when facing death, but Huang Xiuan actually felt the aura of death from the gate of the underworld. Ling Shiqi formed a sword with his fingers, and a shocking sword essence suddenly appeared. The sword immortal phantom stepped out with a sword, and suddenly the void froze, as if time had stopped. Then, Ling Shiqi's soul merged into the sword immortal phantom. The 3 of heaven, man, and God became one, and the sword broke the world. The first move of the sword god. At the same time, the gate of the underworld continued to surge out of the gate of the underworld. The sword immortal phantom was also stained with a layer of black gas, becoming half black and half white, like a demon god. Ling Shiqi mobilized the power of the gate of the underworld on the basis of the first move of the sword god. The pure sword essence merged with the underworld's power. This was the ghost god's sword. Huang Xiuan was really shocked this time. He had seen Ling Shiqi's first move of the sword god. Back then, he had used this move to force Tang Haokuang to see this ability. But now, the first move of the sword god had transformed into the ghost god's sword. It was completely without words, and its power had multiplied. This suddenly increased the pressure on Huang Xiuan because he was not confident that he could withstand this sword. He, who had just said that he would win in one move, now began to hate himself for talking nonsense. But now, he could not back down. It was still unknown who would win. Huang Xiuan's saber and sword came out together. The saber was like a brilliant sun that shone through the ages, and the sword was like a falling moon that cut through the past and present. The saber and sword had the power of the sun and the moon. This was Huang Xiuan's strongest saber and sword. Back then, he had defeated the master of the Mountain Sea sect, Chang Fengyu, with this move, so he still had some confidence in his heart. However, in the next moment, his confidence was instantly destroyed. The ghost god's sword and the sun and moon saber sword collided violently. Everyone thought that this would be a fierce collision, but the result was that before the two could even get close, the luminous sun and flying moon was contaminated by the endless netherworld qi. In the blink of an eye, half of the luminous sun and flying moon was corroded, and its spirituality was greatly damaged. On the other hand, Ling Shiqi's sword of demons and gods was even more powerful. In an instant, the sword of demons and gods could cut through the sun and shatter the moon. Not only that, but the ghost god's sword continued slashing at Huang Xiuan. The sword intent that was filled with ghostly aura was like the descent of the Grim Reaper, about to reap Huang Xiuan's life. A trace of blood flowed from the corner of Huang Xiuan's mouth. His heart was in turmoil, but his mind was clear. He immediately shouted, "Stop, I admit defeat." Before he could finish his sentence, wisps of black flames appeared. Those flames looked extremely weak, but each wisp contained the essence of heaven and earth. Under the black flames, Ling Shiqi's demon god's sword evaporated like snow under the sun. The one who attacked was naturally heavenly venerable black flame. Ling Shiqi waved his hand and summoned back the gate of the underworld. He cupped his hands at heavenly venerable black flame and left. He knew that the more he spoke, the more likely he would make mistakes. It was better not to speak. Heavenly venerable black flame stared at Ling Shiqi for a while. No one knew what he was thinking. At this moment, Monarch Cloud Shuttle sent a voice transmission. "Black Flame, you seem to care a lot about this Ling Shiqi. He looks a little familiar. Moreover, this person's strength far exceeds his cultivation level. He is worth paying attention to. Just now, Yunliang Ji's cultivation technique was somewhat similar to yours. Didn't you care a lot about it?" Coincidence, it's just a coincidence." As for the others, they could not help but exclaim. This Ling Shiqi defeated Meng Xian in one move last time. I thought that was his limit. I didn't expect him to be so strong. He is indeed strong. That Huang Xiuan is at the peak of the unity of heaven and man realm. He is also an expert who has the qualifications to be ranked on the Flying Dragon list. In the end, he was still defeated by Ling Shiqi in 2 moves. I think that Huang Xiuan is a bit too arrogant. If he had fought steadily, with his strength and battle experience, he might have been able to win. But he insisted on playing with one move to determine the outcome. In the end, he played himself into it. I am very curious about the origins of Ling Shiqi. It is said that he is the disciple of the heavenly origin stage expert, Sword King Langyu, but that ghastly thing just now was obviously not the inheritance of the Sword King Langyu. This time, it's quite mysterious. To be honest, I feel that he has something to do with the Netherworld Temple. The moment the words Netherworld Temple were spoken, the entire place immediately fell silent. In this continent, the most mysterious and powerful forces were the Yin and Yang halls. It was rumored that these two forces were even stronger than the three great imperial dynasties. However, their whereabouts were too secretive, and a large number of spirit cultivators had never seen the Yin and Yang halls in their entire lives. However, the people gathered here were all the upper echelons of the various large forces, and they had more or less heard of the Yin and Yang halls. Among them, the Netherworld Temple seemed to cultivate the power of the Netherworld. They then thought of Ling Shiqi's age, cultivation, and strength. If there was any force that could nurture such a genius, it would probably be the Netherworld Temple. With that said, the more everyone thought about it, the more they felt that it was possible. In the end, Ling Shiqi was already labeled as a member of the Netherworld Temple. After Ling Shiqi stood up, there were people who came over to talk to him. Their words seemed to be testing his identity, but Ling Shiqi's words seemed simple, but in reality, they were watertight, and no one could see through him. This way, he became even more mysterious in everyone's hearts. Huang Xiuan's old face was flushed red. Before the battle, he thought that he was very lucky. Who would have thought that he would lose to a junior? At the same time, a knot appeared in his heart, and that was whether Ling Shiqi had deliberately held back his strength when he was in Donglin County. If Ling Shiqi had deliberately admitted defeat when he fought with Tang Haoquang, it meant that Ling Shiqi had the strength to defeat Tang Haoquang at that time. It meant that Ling Shiqi was not only talented, but also scheming enough. If Ling Shiqi had not held back his strength at that time, it meant that Ling Shiqi's strength had increased by a large margin from Donglin County until now. But how was that possible? Huang Xiuan would rather believe that it was the first possibility than believe that a man in the oneness of heaven and men realm could advance by leaps and bounds in just a few months. Huang Xiuan forcefully suppressed the complicated emotions in his heart. He tried his best to make himself look normal as he walked to Ling Shiqi's side and asked, "Brother Lang, I've always been a straightforward person. I accept my defeat wholeheartedly, but please answer me honestly. When did you master the move that defeated me just now?" Ling Shiqi scratched his head and replied, "Oh, I just comprehended it when I watched the Black Devil Hand fight." Pfft! Huang Xiuan spat out a mouthful of blood. Chapter 764. Ling Shiqi's words almost caused Huang Xiuan to faint. Huang Xiuan did not know whether Ling Shiqi was telling the truth or not, but he really did not have the face to continue staying here, so he simply waved his sleeves and left. There was no lack of spiritual mages among the experts present. Cui Linglong, who was recognized as the strongest spiritual mage, was a little surprised at this moment. She thought to herself, "Did I see wrongly? Ling Shiqi's mental strength seems to be higher than mine." Ling Shiqi did not know what others were thinking. His own mood was fluctuating because even he did not expect the power of the gate of the underworld to be so great. This was the first time the power of the underworld had appeared in this world. It could also be said that this power did not belong to this world. Perhaps it was because of this that it was so terrifying. Not only that, when Ling Shiqi fought with Huang Xiuan, he did not completely use the power of the gate of the underworld. The power of the gate of the underworld was actually determined by the number of souls collected in the underworld and the quality of the souls. However, Ling Shiqi did not summon the thousands of souls in the underworld. Otherwise, it was unknown whether Huang Xiuan could survive. The gate of the underworld had significantly improved Ling Shiqi's strength. Now, if he were to fight with the 4 experts of the Black Devil Hand, he was quite confident. After this round of battle, half of the people were eliminated. There were only 44 experts left. There were 36 positions in the Flying Dragon list, so there were still 8 people present who would not be able to enter the Flying Dragon list. Since they had already come this far, naturally no one was willing to give up. The opportunity to become famous in the world was close at hand. It was worth mentioning that except for Ling Shiqi, everyone else was at the peak of the unity of heaven and man realm. Ling Shiqi was the only exception. His existence was no longer a dispensable character. The ghostly sword he used to defeat Huang Xiuan was somewhat shocking. Not all the experts present were confident that they could withstand it. No one dared to be careless when fighting against him. From the looks of it, Ling Shiqi had become a powerful opponent for the Flying Dragon list. Empyrean He Yen descended from the sky. Everyone is only one step away from the Flying Dragon list. According to the rules, there will be another competition. The 22 victors will directly enter the Flying Dragon list and have the right to be exempted from challenges. As for the losers, they were not eliminated. You still had a chance, and that was to take turns fighting. The 14 people who won the most matches would also be able to enter the Flying Dragon list. When all 30 spots on the Flying Dragon leaderboard were filled, there would be a ranking battle. Those who were ranked lower could challenge those who were ranked higher, but the 22 who won at the beginning had the right to refuse once. If many people challenged the same person at the same time, then the challenged person had the right to choose his opponent. This will determine your final ranking and then make it public. Empyrean Black Flame stated the following rules. Hearing this, everyone's hearts calmed down. Even if they lost once, they still had a chance. Naturally, their hopes were much greater. The 10,000 Laws Sex Chui Linglong covered her mouth and smiled. She asked, "Dare I ask, Heavenly Venerable Black Flame, when is the next battle?" Heavenly Venerable Black Flame only said 2 words, "Now." Now? Everyone was stunned. The last time the battle ended was 2 days ago. Why was it so urgent this time? Moreover, everyone had just fought, and some of them had even suffered minor injuries. If they continued to fight in this state, they would definitely be at a disadvantage. Immediately, many people showed their dissatisfaction. Monarch Cloud Shuttle said, "To have your current cultivation and achievements, you must have experienced countless life and death tribulations. No danger can make you ready to deal with it. I don't think you can't even deal with this small difficulty. Moreover, we have prepared high-grade spirit pills that can help you recover to your peak state." That's right. Heavenly Venerable Black Flame continued, "Moreover, you are only competing, not fighting to the death. There is no need for this, and it won't affect you much." The 2 Sky Origin Stage cultivators, who were also the Dark Thunder Guards and the Discipline Commission's commander, had said so. Although the crowd was dissatisfied, they didn't dare to offend the 2 bosses, so they all nodded in agreement. Of course, this rule was arranged by Ling Shiqi. The reason why he did this was that he didn't want the candidates of the Flying Dragon list to cause trouble. Among the 44 people, to be honest, none of them would be eliminated. However, in fact, some of them would be eliminated. In the end, it was hard to say who would miss the Flying Dragon list. If there was time, these people might take a good rest and prepare for the next battle. However, the people who came with them might not be so obedient. Maybe someone would cause trouble because of this. Not only the Flying Dragon list, but also the Hidden Dragon list and the Wandering Dragon list. Ling Shiqi decided to decide the final candidates in one go, so as to avoid unnecessary trouble. The cultivators in the small Chaos Paradise accepted this rule. Heavenly Venerable Black Flame waved his hand, and names appeared in the battle area again. Ling Shiqi looked at the names and his mouth twitched. His opponent this time was Chui Linglong from the wonderful sect of Thousand Arts. A cultivator who was half a step away from the Sky Origin stage, the most popular candidate for the first place of the Flying Dragon list. Chui Linglong was not as cold as He Mozho. She looked at Ling Shiqi, licked her lips and said, "Little brother, it is you. I am very interested in you." Ling Shiqi didn't know whether he was lucky or not. He did want to fight against Chui Linglong, but he used his full strength, not the identity of the Wave Island Sword King's disciple. Now, as he wished, he met Chui Linglong. However, even with the help of the Gate of the Underworld, he couldn't defeat Chui Linglong. Ling Shiqi touched his chin and suddenly had an idea. He smiled and said, "It is not impossible to defeat her." Then he raised his head and said, "Unfortunately, I am also interested in you." He. Chui Linglong's eyes were full of smiles. You little naughty boy. Come, let's have a good talk. Then she stretched out her little finger and hooked it at Ling Shiqi. Suddenly, a series of dry coughs could be heard from the side. It was supposed to be a proper competition, but why was the atmosphere so strange in front of the two of them? Chui Linglong's beauty could be considered to be very beautiful. Otherwise, she wouldn't have participated in the Phoenix dance ranking. However, everyone present was old and had seen all kinds of beauties. Besides, they all knew very well that Chui Linglong looked to be in her 30s. She was mature and charming, but in fact, she was already in her 70s or 80s. They were not interested in the old woman. Someone secretly transmitted a message: Chui Linglong can't be an old cow eating young grass, right? No, it should be an old cow eating a young cow. Maybe that kid likes this kind of food. Chapter 765. Ling Shiqi did not know what others were thinking. He looked relaxed on the surface, but he had already adjusted himself to the best state and was ready to fight Chui Linglong. Chui Linglong smiled and walked forward. Little brother, don't be nervous. Big sister will be gentle. As she spoke, in the blink of an eye, with Yu Linglong as the center, a dazzling array formation instantly unfolded. The array was dark green in color. As it slowly rotated, it emitted a power that made the heavens and earth tremble. Even the air was dyed with a layer of green. The nearby experts' faces changed slightly. The green light contained poison. Everyone immediately retreated far away. Ling Shiqi also frowned. He had seen Chui Linglong fight before, but he had never seen her use poison. In addition, generally speaking, high-level spirit cultivators would not cultivate poison techniques, because even spirit pulse stage spirit cultivators had protective spirit chi, and ordinary poisons had no effect. Therefore, the higher the realm, the greater the drawback of poison. But now that Chui Linglong was using poison, no one dared to underestimate it. Ling Shiqi thought that his body was strong and was not afraid of poison. However, he still summoned sword chi to protect his body. He was not willing to use his body to test the poison. At this time, Chui Linglong's figure quietly disappeared into the array. Ling Shiqi held the spirit sword in his hand and stabbed out. Behind him, a stormy wave was formed completely from sword chi. The sword wave roared out and rampaged. However, the dark green aura was eroding the sword wave. Soon, more than half of it was assimilated. Ling Shiqi could not even find Chui Linglong's shadow. Not only that, the dark green aura was still slowly expanding. It seemed that it was about to completely envelop Ling Shiqi. Ling Shiqi felt that it was a bit tricky. Chui Linglong did not rely on her cultivation to attack. Instead, she used this strange method to test the waters. From this point of view, Chui Linglong definitely did not underestimate Ling Shiqi. She treated him as an opponent of the same level. Ling Shiqi was already at a disadvantage before the two sides even started fighting. He had some methods to force Chui Linglong out, but that would expose his identity. Therefore, Ling Shiqi closed his eyes and connected his mind with the ground beneath his feet. More than half of the ground of the minor chaos paradise was under his control. Found it. Ling Shiqi's eyes widened as he used the power of the earth to locate Chui Linglong. With a point of the spirit sword, the sword river surged upwards. Boundless sword intent engulfed the entire area, heading straight for the edge of the formation. Sure enough, a blurry figure formed a strange hand seal with both hands. In an instant, flames soared into the sky, dazzling golden light, and rolling thunder. Chui Linglong was able to control three powerful elements at the same time. Crimson flames, golden light, and lightning filled the heavens and earth, colliding with each other and emitting bursts of violent aura. In an instant, Ling Shiqi's sword river was annihilated. Little brother, you're quite sensitive. You found me so quickly. Chui Linglong was still able to tease him while controlling the three violent forces. It was clear that her control over the forces had reached an extreme level. Ling Shiqi ignored Cui Linglong. He changed his sword style and suddenly, endless green sword light bloomed like a flood dragon. It was extraordinarily powerful. However, in Cui Linglong's eyes, this sword style was still a little weak. She pointed her finger and the three forces in the sky suddenly shrank and condensed into a huge three-headed python. Each head of the python contained different forces: golden light, raging flames, and lightning. Then, the three python heads opened their mouths and circles of formations appeared. The three forces of gold, crimson, and purple poured down as if they were going to penetrate the entire ground. Ling Shiqi's sword Chi Flood Dragon was pierced into several pieces. He also knew that he could not defeat Cui Linglong with this sword style. With a thought, the broken flood dragon turned into a sea. There were no waves in the sea, as if it was a pool of stagnant water. An island stood in the middle of the sea. The island was surrounded by clouds, like a legendary mirage. Cui Linglong's three streams of light that could shatter everything fell into the sea, like a clay ox entering the sea, and did not cause any waves. The surrounding experts were surprised. How did Cui Linglong's powerful spiritual technique disappear just like that? How did Ling Shiqi do it? Cui Linglong also stopped smiling. Her expression became serious. However, her eyes immediately flashed and she said, "So it's an illusion technique. Moreover, it's an extremely special illusion technique. It has already reached the level where it can change reality and illusion. You've really hidden yourself well. You flatter me. A mirage seems to be an illusion, but it actually exists somewhere in the world. It can be considered an illusion." Ling Shiqi explained. Cui Linglong and the other experts nodded as if they were serious. The real situation was that Ling Shiqi was just using an illusion. He condensed a black hole under the illusion to swallow Cui Linglong's attack. Of course, in order not to be seen by Celestial Master He Yen and Monarch Cloud Shuttle, he only used a trace of the power of the black hole. In addition, he used an illusion to cover it, so it should not be discovered. He used such a cheating method to tie with Cui Linglong, which showed that Cui Linglong's strength was also very strong. Hearing this, Cui Linglong's expression changed. Then, she suddenly smiled and said, "Little brother, you've also comprehended illusions. That's great. However, this elder sister also knows illusions." Chapter 766. In fact, Ling Shiqi was able to win against Cui Linglong because of a little trick. If it was a normal fight, he would have lost to Cui Linglong if he could not use his full strength. Therefore, Ling Shiqi purposely used the power of the earth to create an illusion of Sea City Chenlu to arouse Cui Linglong's desire to win. As the most powerful spiritual cultivation sect in the world, the wonderful sect of 10,000 arts definitely had illusions. Therefore, since Cui Linglong was able to cultivate a genius like Meng Tian, she must have dabbled in illusions as a master of the wonderful sect of 10,000 arts. After being stimulated by Ling Shiqi, Cui Linglong would most likely use illusions to fight back. Then, she would fall into Ling Shiqi's trap. Ling Shiqi's mind power had already condensed into a godly soul. This was something only a spiritual cultivator of the Tianyuan realm could have. Moreover, he was also proficient in illusions. Cui Linglong, who did not specialize in illusions, was naturally inferior to him in this aspect. At this moment, his spiritual sword had pierced through Cui Linglong's chest. However, Cui Linglong's life force did not show any signs of dissipating. Her chest was filled with strands of dark green radiance. Ling Shiqi's sword did not feel like it had pierced through anything. "You can't hurt me. I didn't lose." Cui Linglong stopped joking and gritted her teeth angrily. Ling Shiqi shook his head. "I didn't use any sword skills. Otherwise, even if you have a secret technique to protect yourself, you will either die or be crippled. Little sister, why are you so stubborn? You..." Cui Linglong was about to explode with anger. Just as she was about to explode, Lord He Yen descended from the sky. His eyes contained the power of divine anger. Cui Linglong immediately shut her mouth. Lord He Yen said calmly, "It's just a fight. There is no life or death. A loss is a loss." Yes. Although Cui Linglong was unwilling, she did not dare to be presumptuous in front of heavenly venerable black flame. She could only swallow her anger and roll her eyes at Ling Shiqi, as if she could peel off a layer of his skin with her gaze. Ling Shiqi ignored this look, but he could not ignore the looks of the other masters. At this time, those who were not involved in the battle were staring at Ling Shiqi. None of them understood how Ling Shiqi won. In short, it was related to illusion. Not only was his cultivation profound at such a young age, his talent in the sword Dao was astonishing, and he even grasped a type of extreme Yin energy. That was not all. It seemed that his attainments in illusions were also very high. How much more was he hiding? Where were the limits of his strength? Ling Shiqi's three opponents so far were Meng Xian, Huang Xiuan, and Cui Linglong. Except for Meng Xian, the rest of the battles were beyond everyone's expectations. Where did such a monstrous genius come from in the Thunderblaze dynasty? After Cui Linglong walked into the crowd, Celestial Master He Yen turned around and glanced at Ling Shiqi. At the same time, a voice sounded in his ears. "It seems that you are very free." Ling Shiqi's heart skipped a beat, then he smiled inwardly. Celestial Master He Yen had seen through him. Perhaps he had used his mental strength when countering Cui Linglong's illusion. A person's appearance could be easily changed, but the aura of one's mental strength could not be changed. This was why Celestial Master He Yen had sensed it. However, Celestial Master He Yen immediately flew into the sky and continued to observe the other battles, as if he had no intention of interfering. Ling Shiqi thought about it and felt that it was true. He was originally the core person of the World First Spirit Cultivator Conference. It was not a big deal for him to secretly go down and play a game. Furthermore, according to the information from the Soul Avatar, it wouldn't be long before Heavenly Venerable Black Flame and Monarch Cloud Shuttle would enter the Imperial Consecration Hall and give up their positions. They must have heard the news, and at this time, they were not in the mood to meddle in other people's business. Following Ling Shiqi's victory over Cui Linglong, he had already confirmed a spot on the Flying Dragon list. As for the specific ranking, it was hard to say. He would have to wait until the ranking battle to confirm it. However, Ling Shiqi's interest was almost at an end. In any case, entering the Flying Dragon list was his goal. He did not care about the ranking. After all, this identity could only be considered a temporary alias. Moreover, he had defeated Cui Linglong, so the other party would definitely not let it go. With Cui Linglong's strength, she would definitely win the next battle. At that time, she would definitely challenge Ling Shiqi. That would be troublesome. Thus, Ling Shiqi left the minor chaos paradise under everyone's astonished gazes. Why did he leave? He gave up on the ranking battle. This way, his ranking will not be near the top. Maybe he paid a big price to defeat Cui Linglong and can't fight anymore. At least he knows his place. That makes sense. His cultivation is the lowest. When the ranking battle comes, people will want to challenge him the most. Ling Shiqi walked out of the minor chaos paradise and went straight back to the Dark Thunder Guard's headquarters. There was another reason why he left early. The battles of the Unity of Heaven and Man realm were about to enter the final ranking battle. Then, the battles of the other realms would only progress faster. It was time for him to come out and end it. When he arrived at the Xingji Pavilion, Ling Shiqi withdrew the illusory body he used to deceive people and called Renyi. "Sir, the Hidden Dragon list and the Wandering Dragon list are out." "Oh. That's fast. Let me see." Ling Shiqi was very interested in the people on the Hidden Dragon list and the Wandering Dragon list. He first opened the Hidden Dragon list. It included the most outstanding low-level disciples of the Thunderblaze dynasty. These people were definitely the most important people of the younger generation of the major forces. Unfortunately, Ling Shiqi did not know anyone on the list. He only vaguely remembered a few people from the Dark Thunder Guards. Then, he opened the list of the Wandering Dragon list. There were a few familiar names on it. For example, Bing Shang. He was currently ranked 8th on the Wandering Dragon list. Bing Shang's cultivation was at the peak of the Spirit Aperture realm. He had the Ice variant 0 Ice and was later accepted as a disciple by Black Frost Noble Lady. It was not surprising that he had such a high ranking. With Bing Shang's name on the list, Ling Shiqi could imagine that when the dragon list was released, the Blood Robe Pavilion's name would gradually appear in front of everyone. This was what the upper echelons of the Blood Robe Pavilion wanted to see the most. Aside from Bing Shang, he also saw Yan Yi and Mo Li's names. These two were relatively famous beauties in the capital. They were in the middle of the Wandering Dragon list. Ling Shiqi continued to look and did not see Tang Wanxiu's name. This was within his expectations. Although Tang Wanxiu's cultivation had greatly increased and could last 2 more rounds, it was still too difficult for her to enter the Wandering Dragon list. That's good. Ling Shiqi murmured. He had an idea in his mind. At this moment, He Feichen hurried in from outside. Sir, the Divine Dragon list has been decided. The reason why they were like this was not because of anything else, but because they felt that Fu Yingxi was not worthy of this title. Although Fu Yingxi was the Hall Master of the Extreme Saber Hall, his strength was naturally very strong, but he was still far from being number 1 in the world. Not to mention the Tongxian realm experts in the Falling Star continent, there were many Heavenly Origin realm experts in the Thunderfire dynasty who were stronger than Fu Ying. The reason why those people did not come to the first Spirit Cultivator Assembly was because they were afraid that it was a trap set by the Thunderflame dynasty and did not dare to take the risk. Otherwise, who knew if Fu Ying's lineage could even squeeze into the Divine Dragon list? When Ling Shiqi saw their reactions, he smiled even more satisfactorily. He asked, if both of you think that Fu Yingxi is unworthy of the title of number 1 in the world, what will the experts of the other top sects think? What will they do? Don't forget, after the list is announced, anyone who can defeat a spirit cultivator on the list will be able to replace him. Hearing this, He Feichen and Renyi looked at each other. They could instantly guess what Fu Ying would encounter in the future. As the so-called number 1 in the world, there were many people who were dissatisfied with him, and there were also many who had the ability to defeat him. It could be imagined that Fu Yingxi would be challenged by many people in the future. Those who had the strength to challenge him were basically the strongest experts of the top sections. No matter who won or lost, the grudges between these sects would be formed, and it would be a great grudge. This Fu Yingxi would probably attract endless trouble because of the title of number 1 in the world. Then again, the greater the conflict between the spirit cultivator sects, the more beneficial it would be for the Thunderflame dynasty. This was also the main reason why Ling Shiqi proposed the first Spirit Cultivator Assembly. He Feichen understood everything and immediately shouted, Master's wisdom makes me prostrate myself in admiration. Renyi was not as exaggerated as him, and also cupped his fists and said, Master is wise. Alright, the first Spirit Cultivator Assembly is about to end, and there are a lot of loose ends. You guys have to keep a close eye on it, and don't let anything go wrong. Ling Shiqi waved his hand, and the two of them left. Not long after, the Heaven Man Unity Realms ranking competition also ended, and the final ranking of the Flying Dragon list was finally sent to Ling Shiqi. He didn't look at anyone else, but first looked at his own position. On the Flying Dragon list, it was written like this, 22 ND place on the Flying Dragon list, Ling Shiqi. Disciple of the Sword King Lang Yu, middle stage of the Heaven Man Unity Realm, proficient in the way of the sword, controlling the power of extreme Yin. He had entered the ranking competition as the victor, so theoretically, his lowest ranking should have been 22nd place. But in reality, he had forfeited the rest of the ranking competition, so it was very likely that his ranking would be very low. He was already very satisfied that he was still at 22nd place. After all, the rest of the people on the Flying Dragon list were all at the peak of the Heaven-Man Unity realm. The top 4 of the Flying Dragon list were Wei Zhen of the Six Directions Spirit Realm, Hua Feiyuan of the Liuhua Palace, and Black Devil Hand of the Purgatory Demon Sect. The 4th place was Chui Linglong of the 10,000 Wonders Sect. Chui Linglong was actually able to climb to 4th place. It seems that her strength is well deserved. I was lucky to be able to beat her once, Ling Shiqi said to himself. Since all the rankings had been released, it meant that the first Spirit Cultivator Assembly was coming to an end. Now, all that was left was the last public ranking. The first Spirit Cultivator Assembly had caused a huge commotion, so naturally, it couldn't be a weak finish. Therefore, Ling Shiqi had specially scheduled a grand ceremony for a few days later. The Spirit Cultivator who had specially come to announce the various rankings. On this day, the Emperor of the Thunderfire Dynasty, Lei Haoyan, personally came and read out all the names one by one from the Hidden Dragon list. In fact, these people already knew the results after the end of the competition, but they were still incomparably excited at this moment. This was because there were countless people watching them, causing them to feel an unprecedented sense of satisfaction. When Lei Haoyan was about to read the last name, the Hall Master of the Supreme Blade Hall, Fu Yingxi, did not hide his emotions and proudly raised his head. The number 1 on the Divine Dragon list, and also the number 1 in the world, Fu Yingxi. After these words were spoken, the scene instantly became strangely silent, and the smile on Fu Yingxi's face also stiffened. As the number 1 on the Divine Dragon list, he had fought for it with his own hands. However, the Thunderfire Dynasty had actually given him the title of number 1 in the world. Although he was a person who valued fame, he knew that he could not afford it. At the same time, he also understood that he had been played by the Thunderfire Dynasty. Chapter 768. At this moment, Fu Yingxi was cursing the Thunderfire Dynasty in his heart. He did not give anyone face and immediately turned to leave. Everyone who saw this scene secretly shook their heads. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that the Thunderfire Dynasty was using Fu Yingxi's title of number 1 in the world to cause conflict between the top sections. But so what if they knew? The Sky Origin stage experts of the other top sects would still challenge Fu Yingxi like moths to a flame. This was the great attraction of fame to people. Just like the spirit cultivators on the various rankings, which one of them did not know the intentions of the Thunderfire Dynasty. However, they still did not hesitate and risked their lives to fight for a position on the Dragon rankings. Even if they were used by the Thunderfire Dynasty, even if they would cause trouble for themselves, they still could not control themselves under the temptation of fame and fortune. With Fu Yingxi's departure, it meant that the world's first Spirit Cultivator Assembly had finally come to an end. This grand event that had ignited all the Spirit Cultivators of the Thunderfire Dynasty had ended, but an even greater undercurrent would sweep through all the Spirit Cultivator sects of the Thunderfire Dynasty. After that, Lei Haoyan gathered all the ministers. All of them had happy expressions on their faces, and they were used to not showing their emotions, but they could not care less. This was because the benefits that the first Spirit Cultivator Assembly had brought to the Thunderfire Dynasty were simply too great. They all knew that today was the day to discuss their merits and rewards. Ling Shiqi's soul clone first praised everyone, then directly pointed to Ling Shiqi, Minister Lu. The world's first Spirit Cultivator Assembly was your suggestion, and you were the one who presided over it from start to finish. Now that it has been completed, Minister Lu's contributions cannot go unnoticed. If you have any requests, just say it. We will do our best to satisfy you. When he said this, the minds of the ministers began to move. Ling Shiqi's contributions were undeniable. They all recognized it, so it was not too surprising that His Majesty could give such a promise. What they were curious about was, what kind of reward would Ling Shiqi propose? To him, as one of the 4 great directors of the Dark Thunder Guards, he naturally did not lack cultivation resources. Therefore, everyone guessed that he would definitely ask for power. At the same time, Ling Shiqi was already one of the 4 great directors. If he wanted to climb up, there was only one position left. The commander of the Dark Thunder Guards. Although Leng Shiqi's cultivation and experience were far from being qualified to be the Grand Commander, his contributions had deepened and he was deeply favored by His Majesty. As the saying goes, a new emperor brings in new ministers. If Leng Shiqi really wanted to take a step forward, His Majesty might agree. Many people secretly glanced at Master He Yan. He had been the commander of the Dark Thunder Guards for dozens of years. He was a senior Sky Origin stage cultivator. Would he be willing to give up his position to a young man? The atmosphere in the hall quickly became a little strange. Everyone was waiting for Leng Shiqi's answer. Leng Shiqi walked out of the crowd and stood in the middle of the hall. I will take whatever your Majesty gives. The soul avatar on the dragon throne smiled in satisfaction. Since that's the case, we will make the decision for you. As he spoke to hear, he turned to look at Empyrean Black Flame. He didn't speak, but his meaning was clear. Empyrean Black Flame said expressionlessly, I am willing to follow your Majesty's orders. Everyone present could see that Empyrean Black Flame was unwilling to give up his power. However, he wasn't too obsessed with power and didn't want to go against His Majesty. The soul avatar smiled and said, You are too serious, Grand Commander. To be honest, we do intend to let Lu Xingji be the commander of the Dark Thunder Guards. Because he is young. But because he is too young to be qualified for this important position, we have decided to give Lu Xingji the position of a candidate for the Grand Commander. A candidate for the Grand Commander. This was already amazing. Although he was only a candidate, when the time came, he would be the only candidate. The position of the Grand Commander would naturally be his. In other words, the position of the Dark Thunder Guard's Grand Commander had been reserved by him. As for when he would take the position, it was just a matter of time. Empyrean Black Flame had a way out. He stepped forward and said, Your Majesty, when Lu Xingji breaks through to the Sky Origin stage, I will give up the position of the Grand Commander. The courtiers couldn't help laughing secretly. Among these people, there weren't many who had high cultivation. They all knew that the Sky Origin stage wasn't easy to break through. They didn't know how long it would take for Leng Shiqi to break through to the Sky Origin stage. It might even take a few decades. Empyrean Black Flame's move of retreating to advance was brilliant. However, Leng Shiqi nodded and said, Yes, Your Majesty. The soul avatar said, Lu Xingji has made such a great contribution. I won't be so stingy as to only give him an empty title. After he finished speaking, the old eunuch beside him held the imperial edict and said, By the will of the heavens, the emperor decrees, Lu Xingji, the Dark Thunder Guard's Grand Commander, has made great contributions to the empire. He will be conferred the title of Jinling Duke. In addition, the heavenly tomb will be opened for 3 days. As soon as the imperial edict came out, the courtiers immediately began to whisper. First of all, the opening of the heavenly tomb didn't surprise them. Although the heavenly tomb couldn't be opened at will, Leng Shiqi's contributions were too great. It was reasonable to give him a special case. However, the fact that His Majesty conferred him the title of Jinling Duke was extremely shocking. Among the ranks of nobility, Grand Duke was already the limit. Any higher and Leng Shiqi could only be conferred the title of King. It could be said that Leng Shiqi's status was only second to that of Prince. The ranks of nobility were a bit special because most of the dukes and marquises didn't hold positions in the imperial court. They basically relied on the glory of their ancestors. As for these people, the Thunder Flame dynasty didn't use them as much as possible. Even if some of them held important positions, they would gradually be demoted by the next generation. In the end, they would all become idle people. The Thunder Flame dynasty could let these people live a carefree life, but they definitely wouldn't let them hold great power. This was because the dukes and marquises all had some military power. According to the rank of nobility, they had the right to train soldiers in their manners. If these people still held high positions in the imperial court, it was equivalent to having the capital to rebel. No emperor would allow such a thing to happen, even if it was just a small possibility. Leng Shiqi was already one of the 4 great managers of the Dark Thunder Guards. He had also obtained the position of Great Commander Candidate. He held monstrous power in his hands and had countless experts under him. If such a person were to be given the noble status of a duke, he would be able to openly recruit soldiers and buy horses. Wouldn't that be like raising a tiger and inviting calamity? Even though some of the ministers wanted to retort, the two elders from the imperial family frowned deeply. However, Lei Haoyan was the first to speak. We know that you all have misgivings, but Minister Lu has yet to marry and has no children. The title of Jinling Duke cannot be inherited. Moreover, Minister Lu is loyal. We believe in him. The second half of his sentence was directly ignored by everyone. The focus was on the first half. The title was not hereditary. In this way, Ling Shiqi's threat was much smaller and the ministers could reluctantly accept it. Ling Shiqi knew that the opportunity couldn't be missed. He immediately said, "This minister accepts the decree. Long live your majesty." Chapter 769. Ling Shiqi had already thanked him and received his reward. Even if there were a few dissatisfied ministers, they still shut their mouths. Lei Haoyan was the new emperor, but he had also modified the First Spirit Cultivator Conference a lot. His strategy and wisdom had already been recognized by these ministers. Moreover, Ling Shiqi's contributions were unparalleled, so it was barely acceptable. There was no need to contradict the emperor over this matter. At this point, Ling Shiqi's reward was set. He had reserved the position of the Dark Thunder Guard's commander in advance. This was the power of an extremely high official. The title of Duke Jinling was a symbol of his status. Also, entering the heavenly tomb to cultivate was to increase his cultivation. These three rewards could be said to be all-encompassing. They were what Ling Shiqi needed the most. Of course, this was also a reward that he had long considered for himself. The degree of control was very good. Although many ministers felt that it was a bit excessive, there were restrictions in each reward, so it could shut their mouths. Ling Shiqi's matter was over, and all that was left was to reward them according to their contributions. In this First Spirit Cultivator Conference, apart from the Dark Thunder Guard, the Discipline Commission, the City Lord's Mansion, and almost all the officials had participated. Now that they had succeeded, they naturally had to be promoted. The atmosphere in the hall became jubilant in the blink of an eye. Basically, as long as the ministers standing here had contributed, they would receive more or less rewards. In the end, they even held a celebratory banquet. This matter was indeed worthy of celebration. After the celebratory banquet ended, Ling Shiqi walked straight into the Dark Thunder Guard's treasury. That was also the entrance to the heavenly tomb. In Ling Shiqi's eyes, power and status were important, but the most important thing was still cultivation and strength. Now that he was at the middle stage of the unity of heaven and man realm, ordinary cultivation pills were no longer of much use to him. In the unity of heaven and man realm, the key to breaking through was to communicate with the elemental power of heaven and earth. Ling Shiqi had already grasped a trace of the power of the laws of heaven and earth. This power far exceeded the power of the elements, but it was also because of this that he was missing a link. If he wanted to increase his realm as soon as possible, he had to make up for the missing link. It was just like having the idea of solving a problem or even knowing the answer. However, the process of solving the problem might not be smooth sailing. The only way to help the Ling Shiqi was to enter the heavenly tomb. It also meant that in their eyes, Lei Haoyan had the qualifications to sit firmly on the dragon throne. Ling Shiqi's soul clone immediately revealed a surprised expression. Why do the two clan elders say that? I need you to help me with my worries. He was not being polite, he was speaking from the bottom of his heart. What a joke, he had not rested for a day for several months, so there was no need to talk about cultivating and refining the purple crystal frost flame. Therefore, he really hoped that Lei Duan-yi and Lei Duan-hai could stay. They could stay and help him with the country's affairs. He immediately continued, I know my own limits. This time, the world's first Spirit Cultivator Conference has ended smoothly. Actually, I have long been planning on how to deal with the spirit cultivator sections. However, I do not know much about other important matters, so I hope that the clan elders can lend me a hand. His words were very sincere, and instantly moved the two clan elders. The two of them were not young anymore, and they were born in the imperial family. Up until now, they had seen countless scenes of brothers killing each other and father and son turning against each other. Even after Lei Haoyan had ascended the throne and given him power, he was still unwilling. He was still so humble and had a pure heart. It was the fortune of the Thunderfire dynasty to have such an emperor. The soul doppelganger saw that the two clan elders were moved, so he immediately struck while the iron was hot. Clan elders, Minister Mo, I plan to set up a 3-yuan pavilion in the imperial palace. The 3 of you will enter the 3-yuan pavilion. In the future, the 3 of you will look through all the big and small memorials of the Thunderfire dynasty. If you can resolve them after discussion, you can directly approve them. There is no need to present them to me. Only if the 3 of you feel that you can't make up your mind, we will discuss them together. Lei Duan Yi, Lei Duan Hai, and Mo Linhui looked at each other. This 3-yuan pavilion was incredible. It was equivalent to the 3 of them taking away half of the imperial power. This had never happened before. After all, which emperor would be at ease handing over power to others? Since the emperor in front of them had done so, it meant that he had great trust in the 3 of them. Just this trust alone made them feel like they were being blessed by the heavens. Mo Linhui was the first to kneel on the ground. To be able to gain your majesty's trust is the fortune of this old subject's life. The two clan elders muttered to themselves, seeming to be a little hesitant. The reason for their hesitation was not that they did not want to agree, but that they had originally planned to give power to Lei Haoyan. In the end, it was the other way around. However, under the sincere gaze of the soul doppelganger, they still nodded. Lei Duan Yi said, Your Majesty, we can agree to the 3-yuan pavilion. If there is a day in the future when Your Majesty no longer needs the 3-yuan pavilion, the 2 of us will immediately leave. The soul doppelganger smiled in his heart. He finally had some time to cultivate. However, just as he was secretly rejoicing, Mo Linhui raised his head and said, Your Majesty, isn't it time to prepare for your concubine selection? Chapter 770. Recently, although the world's first spirit cultivator assembly had ended, a large number of spirit cultivators were not in a hurry to leave the capital because the Phoenix dance role selection was about to begin. Especially this time, the Phoenix dance role was linked to the new emperor's concubine selection, causing countless beauties to break their heads to squeeze in. Of course, there were some who looked down on the position of imperial concubine. Just like 10,000 mysterious sex, Chui Linglong also participated in the Phoenix dance role, but she only went to play. Even if she was chosen as imperial concubine, she would not agree. At this time, in Mo Linhui's study, Mo Yael's eyes were red as she rubbed the corner of her clothes with her fingers, looking very wronged. Father, do you really want me to marry that Lei Haoyan? How old is he? I don't like him. Mo Linhui looked at his younger daughter, who had a child at an old age, and his heart was filled with mixed feelings. He suddenly sighed, and the wrinkles on his face deepened, making him look like he had aged a few years. He sighed, My good daughter, to be able to marry into the imperial family and become an imperial concubine is an honor. Do you know how many women outside dream of becoming an imperial concubine? Father knows that you are playful and do not care about status and power. Father also wants you to live a carefree life, but Father is not young anymore. How many more years can I protect you? If Father is no longer here, what will you do? No. Mo Yao interrupted Mo Linhui with tears on her face. Father, you will definitely live a long life. Mo Linhui dotingly patted the back of Mo Yael's head. Silly child, Father knows my own body best. In recent years, it has been getting worse and worse. Relying on those heavenly treasures to support me for a few more years won't be a problem. So Father wants to pave the way for you in advance. Your cultivation talent is very high. Father originally wanted you to enter the Discipline Commission or the Dark Thunder Guards. Coincidentally, the new emperor has ascended the throne and expanded the harem. This is an excellent opportunity for you. Although you still like to play, you are quick-witted and have cultivation. Ordinary methods are useless against you. In addition, Father is working for you outside. I guarantee that you will be able to sit on the imperial concubine position sooner or later. Even becoming the mother of the world is not impossible. Mo Lu was displeased. Just as she was about to retort, Mo Linhui raised his hand and said earnestly, Father knows you're proud and don't care about these things. But have you ever thought, Father has been the prime minister for many years, and can be considered a person of virtue and prestige, but there are also many people who want to get rid of me. Your brothers aren't mediocre, but they aren't brave either. Once Father is gone, our Mo family will be in danger. Only when you become the imperial concubine and make the Mo family a relative of the imperial family can the Mo family continue to prosper. Do you understand Father's painstaking efforts? Mo Linhui's words were like a mountain pressing down on Mo Li's heart. It turned out that the prosperity of the Mo family was on her shoulders. Even though she was extremely unwilling in her heart, she had already tacitly agreed with Mo Linhui's decision. She was playful, had a bad temper, and was somewhat arrogant. It was precisely because she was born into the Mo family that she had the right to be arrogant. Now, it was time to repay the Mo family. Mo Li's heart was incomparably sour, but her eyes became much more resolute. Father, daughter understands. Daughter will listen to your arrangements. Saying these words seemed to use up all the strength in her body. Then, she turned around and left. Her frail back made one's heart ache. Mo Linhui didn't stop her because not only did he see Mo Li's pain, but he also saw her growth. Lu, don't blame Father, the same thing happened at the Dark Thunder Guard headquarters. Empyrean Black Flame also said the same thing to Lian Yi. The difference was that Lian Ye's reaction was very different from Mo Li's. After Lian Yi heard that Empyrean Black Flame wanted her to enter the palace, her first words were, "But I already have someone in my heart." Hearing this, Empyrean Black Flame was greatly surprised. He had always kept Lian Yi by his side. When did she have someone she liked? Moreover, Empyrean Black Flame was the person in charge of the Thunderfire dynasty's intelligence. If there really was someone close to Lian Yi, he should have already known. Therefore, Empyrean Black Flame immediately determined that this was Lian Ye's excuse. He earnestly said, "Lian, do you know what His Majesty said in the Imperial Court today? His Majesty is already prepared for me to hand over my position as Grand Commander. Compared to entering the Imperial family's Hall of Worship to retire, I'm more willing to guard the border. However, if I do that, there will be no one to take care of you. How can I leave in peace? Godfather, I'm no longer a little girl. I can take care of myself. I know you've matured a lot in the past 2 years, but the person who will take over as Grand Commander isn't someone who's content with his lot. He might take care of you on account of me nurturing him, but he might also secretly pull out my trusted aide. Therefore, it's not suitable for you to continue staying in the Dark Thunder Guard." Empyrean Black Flame frowned. Lian Yi became curious. Just who could shake Empyrean Black Flame's position as Grand Commander and make him feel such dread? Godfather, who is this person you're talking about? Empyrean Black Flame's tone turned serious. He's one of the 4 Grand Commanders of the Dark Thunder Guard who proposed the first Spirit Cultivator Conference, Lu Xingji. It's him. Lian Ye's mouth opened slightly as she shouted in astonishment. That's right. He's currently deeply trusted by His Majesty. His Majesty is preparing to vigorously nurture Lu Xingji to become his trusted aide. You've interacted with Lu Xingji before, so you should know what kind of person he is. Wherever he goes, there will always be an endless vortex lingering around. Actually, this kind of person isn't suitable to be the Grand Commander of the Dark Thunder Guard. Speaking of which, he's more suitable for the Discipline Commission. However, since His Majesty has already made up his mind, even I can't change it. That's why he had you enter the palace. You once said that you wanted to marry someone with a powerful cultivation and resourcefulness. The current His Majesty has a cultivation at the late stage of unity of heaven and man realm. In just a few short months, he obtained the approval of all the ministers and firmly sat on the dragon throne. Could it be that you're still not satisfied? But. Lian Yi suddenly stuttered, a strange expression on her face. She softly muttered, then wouldn't Lu Xingji be even more outstanding? Although her voice was soft, who was Empyrean Black Flame? Of course, he clearly heard these words. He asked in amazement, Lian, could it be that you've taken a fancy to that Lu Xingji? I don't know. Perhaps it's just a bit of worship. Lian Yi revealed the secret in her heart. She hadn't had much contact with Leng Shiqi, but she had watched Leng Shiqi's astonishing growth step by step. She had also witnessed Leng Shiqi's wisdom and courage. In any case, in her eyes, there was no one who could compare to Leng Shiqi. Empyrean Black Flame was silent for a moment before saying, Lu Xingji is indeed a peerless genius that only appears once in 1,000 years. His future achievements are limitless. He definitely won't stop at being the Grand Commander of the Dark Thunder Guard. However, you have to know, how great can his power be? When his ambition isn't satisfied, who knows what he'll do? He's too dangerous and not suitable for you. Lian Yi quietly smiled. Adoptive father, what are you thinking? At most, I have a good impression of him. I've never thought of being together with him. That's good. Empyrean Black Flame's face relaxed. A trace of craftiness flashed through Lian Ye's eyes. However, there's no need for me to marry Lei Haoyan. Even if he wants me to leave the Dark Thunder Guard and travel the world, it might not be a bad thing. Rather than going to the palace to be a canary in a cage, I'd rather be a free little bird. Empyrean Black Flame's expression stiffened again. So you've been waiting for me here. That's fine. It's good that you're far away from the great maelstrom that is the imperial capital. As long as you're happy, your adoptive father will be satisfied. Lian Yi sweetly smiled, but in her heart, she thought, perhaps I should go find him. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.